So let's get rolling. Public comment, non-agenda items, questions, comments, concerns.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, may I have to share?
Okay, let's turn phones off just as a reminder. We'll go from there. Meg,
Good morning. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for the 2 minutes I'm going to give you today on the update on the governance study. We did have our strategy session yesterday. We, as in BizRed and the accountant team, the consultant team. And we're not going to do the third public meeting until probably June. And some people around the community are asking why, because I've been walking around saying end of March, here it comes, and now we're into April. Well, as things go, we slow down, and the things that are going on in this community right now, like the vote for May 6th and SB 260 that has a hearing today, just might affect what kind of scenarios could be chosen, right? If we start getting some money, I'm gonna start doing my own thing right here in my comments. If we start getting money from Madison County Hospital, might that change some people's ideas about annexing into Gallatin or annexing into Madison? It might be a pathway for us to start keeping some of our own money. Does that make sense, Al? Yeah. Therefore, we're still working. We're down to about 6 scenarios, and you can name what they are. It's nothing surprising. The 6 scenarios that came out of all of the community engagement that we did face to face with people. When we matched that up to those 364 responses from the survey, we didn't learn anything new in the survey. Everything is matching up. So I think you could. Anyway, so that public engagement, those survey responses have helped inform about 6 scenarios. We're going to narrow those down to 3, and then we're going to bring that to the community in probably June. And that's pretty much the update. I've been going to all the livable events to talk, to hear from people. I am hearing a little bit about, oh, you just want incorporation. That's still alive, very much alive. It's kind of funny. I think I'm learning that if we do create our own county, we have to incorporate. But anyway, I haven't. Yeah, I know. Would that be funny? Any questions? Any comments? Great, thank you.
Thank you for all the reading material.
Yeah, did you read every page out?
No.
You're such a good student.
On the plane?
I did actually go through every page, but I didn't read every word on every page.
Thank
I'm
you.
not gonna lie. I did study Terry's budget, so.
All right, thank you. See you next
That
month.
was good comments. Thanks. All right, we can call the meeting to order. We'll go through conflicts of interest declarations.
No,
None. Arlen?
Mr. Shaw.
And do we have Dick on right now? Okay.
Peter.
Then we'll go to Peter Magnan. Peter, you're on
None.
mute? Okay, great. And none for me. So consent agenda. We're gonna retool the consent agenda a little bit. Thank you, Johnny, for kind of restructuring this. We'll look at it because Terry always has some feedback. Rather than go through and just entertain a motion on the consent agenda, we can review the minutes. You can give a little financial side. Then under district operating report, we talked about a dashboard or a forum for the team to share updates, challenges, anomalies, anything that we can get a better understanding and put it out there in the public forums, other membership forum. So start off with Terry.
Okay, well.
What do we have?
This is our third quarter billing we did on March 31st. And it came in favorable. We're now standing at approximately 103% of budget on revenues for sewer and 109% on revenues for water. So looking good going into our final quarter of the year, which is our lowest revenue quarter of the year. So things are looking good. Our expenses, other than write-offs for the old plant, are in line. We're actually under with our budget predicted. We were expected to have spent about 1.9, and we're about 1.5 million so far. So we're looking good going into the final quarter. Any questions on this month's financials?
Are you looking at me? I would like to make the same comment I made last month, which is even though we're projecting well on expenses, you can correct me if my numbers are incorrect, but if this is helpful for the public to know.
Yeah.
That includes $600,000 to date this fiscal year in legal expenses.
Sign in.
Defending the district against lawsuits. And to date, it's successful.
Yes.
Defending the district against lawsuits. We had budgeted for 200,000. So we're currently $400,000 over budget. And the projection, which makes sense, given that we're at 600 now, you're projecting that number to be at 800,000 for this year. So I think it's important to the community to know that a significant amount of money that could be used for other purposes, whether it be replacing assets or decreasing, even potentially rate increases, is being expended every year to defend the district against lawsuits. Terry, am I wrong that that overall number over the last few years is now approaching $3 million?
Yes.
Al, I had it on the list later, under legal, to talk about some of this. No, this is where we should have, and, I spent considerable time yesterday dealing with, being a witness on the Des Moines lawsuit that, again, district is covering the legal fees with John Rochford. And just so everybody's up to speed, another suit has been filed. This has gone from a small brush fire to a wildfire on these legal fees. I think we should be tracking these specifically. It's really one case after another with the same firm. We need to start breaking this down, understand where we are, whether it's the Boyne side or now the lawsuit that we have to cover with John Rochway being named, Ron being named. We gotta start getting a breakdown of this. We need a line item to understand where we are legally with these things. And when I say we, I think that the community needs to understand what impact that this is having on them as ratepayers and what impact it's having in the opportunities, as Al said, to utilize the financial resources of other places. It's when you start talking $3 million, this is really getting out of hand. So we talked about it before. I think it'd be a good one to prioritize for the next meeting to have.
It's in there if you want to see it.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, well, I think maybe when we talk about,
Okay.
yeah. And again, I think it's great. Thank you for putting it in this. We still have a 160-page packet here today. This is as much for the people that attend or the members that are would like to know this. People need to understand the impact this is having on. So,
Well, part of the reason I bring it up is so that it doesn't get lost in the fact that we've been able to come under budget in some areas. It's easy to just wash that away because we've saved money in other areas. But I think it's important to know that the district is doing and will continue to try to do a good job of finding ways to not spend money. The numbers are big. And so when we get to the budget phase, there's going to be some conversations of that as well. Maybe not as much today because today's more the introduction of the budget. But I think it's important that the board members, we know that, but that the community is aware of that as well. Great. I'm done for this month talking about it.
but then there's next month. Okay, district operating report, the dashboard. I want to hear what's going on with the team.
Yeah, so this was something I introduced to staff last month. This comes out of previous lives of writing reports for clients and whatnot. It was a pretty good format. The timing of this one wasn't really good with spring break and when all the reports were due, but we did the best we could getting this put together. So this was something that everybody will start seeing that will go with the financial report is the district operating report, a cohesive report.
Okay, get that.
Team works on, but I do like the fact of being able to let them speak to their departments that they oversee. So for the most part, you have the executive summary that kind of pulls everything together if you want a quick read. And then we just, we break it out. So really everything
What you're
I've
supposed to
been
be
doing
doing.
on the front.
Yeah.
With the district and working on the district directives and just kind of what we've been doing. See, it's been a pretty full schedule for March. And then we don't go into the financial a whole lot, just some highlights and spotlights. So Terry, I think this is where we can just create another graph on the legal stuff to give a quick representation. One of the things that we've been tracking is the consumer price index and CPI. This is just a graph. We do have the numbers, but you can see that, you know, just in the first quarter of 2025, we're at 3.5% on CPI. But this goes all the way back to 2015, so you can see all the inflation or sudden rapid influx of inflation over the last several years that we're tracking. The other biggest thing that we're starting to track with all the tariff stuff, we're starting to see on invoices additional tariff costs. So we've had discussions with staff to start looking at the invoices, because once again, that's something that we haven't technically budgeted for, but now there are additional costs that we're starting to see. Like back in 2008 and whatnot, when you started seeing fuel prices going up, and then all of a sudden you started seeing fuel surcharges and stuff starting to show up on invoices. We're seeing the same thing with tariffs and whatnot. Then we got a quick little snapshot of the district budget, revenue, expenses, and kind of what we're seeing. Amy developed this for us, so you let her talk to the key a little bit on what we're seeing.
So the budgeted items are just the smaller pieces there, and then you can see they're matching colors. So the expenses are blue, revenue is orange. So you can just kind of see where we're at there.
Little quick snapshot for us to show that, you know, through the budget year every month, we're trying to stay on budget and trying to cut costs where we can. And then this is the actual budget versus actual expenses. And so as we start in July, you know, we're fully funded, and then as we go through the year, you'll start seeing those expenditures come down or go up in the budget. And then notable events. Then our legal spotlight, just tracking all the legal steps that we're doing. So we're working with the flow deviation resolution, or MOU agreement with Gallatin Water and Sewer District, Cold Smoke, then Flatiron, and all of our annexes. And then, you know, this is waiting for our land deal to be done with Northwest Energy. And then we'll be moving into updating our specifications and standards with our water and sewer ordinances and whatnot. And then meetings, so I meet with Susan this Friday to start working on some of the agreements that we got. Then we've also been working on our water rights and stuff, which I have Julie and Mr. Cusick here, that'll talk later. And then we'll spotlight for district clerk and all the stuff she's doing. We got a couple of conveyances that are coming in that will finally get to close out. And then we do have on our action item the Boutique Hotel, asking for 73 SFEs. Permitting has definitely started to pick up. Looks like we've had 8 this last month for review, which is typical. It's that time of the year, starting to warm up. Everybody's starting to get back to construction and whatnot. So, and then I believe safety and compliance, Peter, hop up here. And so Peter and his team. Peter is our health and safety advisor. Works with the safety committee and is launching our safety program up to speed. Unfortunately, this last month we did have an incident. So if you want to talk to the safety and then also the compliance stuff.
Yeah, the safety training platforms that we're using, I think is going really well. We're just getting moving with it. And we've done one so far. We've been doing it, we'll do it every month at our safety, or at our annual, or excuse me, at our staff meeting. Safety compliance stuff, we're just working on getting there, you know, slowly moving forward and getting.
No, you are not muted.
Eric unfortunately was in an accident. He was rear-ended. Nothing severe. He was totally fine. Besides a little nervous for being in an accident, which is warranted by anybody. We are on the FOG program on compliance. We've been working on that, getting our initial list together to see what's going on. I think we have about 70 to 75%, even more. They've been working on that. Last week I was on spring break and they worked on that. So I don't know exactly the numbers, but I think we're almost complete the initial survey. So what we're doing with the initial survey is going out and seeing how much is hooked up to the grease interceptors, what isn't hooked up, and just doing an initial inspection, and then we'll set up more stuff going forward. The notable events was, no, yeah, we did that. Sorry, I'm just using your. Yeah. Overall, I think everything's moving really well in the safety department and compliance.
The water softener pilots. Since our last meeting, I had 2 people call in the Meadow Village. They had systems fail and said, boy, it's so harsh. Do you have a recommendation? Not that we're out there recommending specific vendors, but direction. That's all I do is say, hey, as far as systems, we want to consider this. Do we have anything that we can carefully direct people on? The difference between the mountain and the meadow sounds substantial.
You know, my opinion would be that you call one of the representative from one of the water companies around here.
We don't have, the district itself doesn't have any recommendations yet. Riverview is currently underway, and I don't know that we've got Mountain Village installed yet. No, so we're gonna have 2 tax systems going. We already have high efficiency and regular salt-based water softeners in the system. This building itself has never had a water softener on it. It's been on Meadow Village for 20+ years. We still got the original hot water tank and boiler down there. And this last year, we just replaced the faucet up here and the 2 toilets up here due to lime scale calcium buildup. We did do sampling on the water for both upper and lower, and you know, there's minerals and stuff that are there. I would recommend, I have on my house personally a whole house filter. I don't have a water softener just for personal reasons, but I do have a whole house filter. And then I use vinegar in my dishwasher to help keep down scale and whatnot. So, you know, to protect your house, you know, versus a water softener that, you know, may or may not work, or it's other stuff. There's sediment filters and whole house filters you can put on. I would recommend people to do that. Would be a recommendation as far as water softening.
I think the concern was that people are kind of pushing pause on this. One of them was surprising to me. In Meadowview had a water heater fail. He said it was just amazing. You know, it's a 5-year project, and maybe 5-year. The other one was Fairways. A part-time resident said it failed completely. So I don't know if it's hot spots within our system or in the same question about both cases where they said, we don't want to put something in, and then the district says, no, we don't want those systems down the line. I think it's as much, make sure they don't install something that's either frowned upon or
I think it goes back to just general building, right? If you have old stuff, it usually lasts a lot longer than new stuff these days.
interesting. Yeah, 5-year product like that, that's a tough one. Okay, that's what you're on and that's what it's about. And it'd be great to have that study completed so that we can give clear direction. Again, we're not here to market for anyone, but we're here to give direction on systems that may be highest and best use. It was polarized for a while.
before the study's done, I think we could recommend or require maybe, I don't know, the high efficiency. If you're gonna use salt-based water softener, use the high efficiency newer ones, not the old.
Yeah.
Timer-based.
That's a start.
And Colligan's got some, the stuff we're testing in Colligan also has salt-free systems and stuff. Those systems on a commercial level, not residential, so see how it works on commercials and stuff.
We could put together just a formal recommendation, which we first test your water coming into your property, see what the hardness is. Second would be a whole house or whole structure filter. Third would be the premium efficiency salt-based water softener.
So someone asked me or someone asked a board member, we say call down. We have an FAQ or something that just says, hey, this is a status report where we are. I mean, this was headline news in the paper 2 years ago when it was this big issue. I know Peter was involved and so on. Be great to have an update. That's what this is about right now, is open lines of communication, not just word of mouth. So if someone has an issue or they would like some advice. Yeah. So Lindsay, you can expect to get a bunch of calls. Call, that's.
Next up is the work.
Right.
Pilfered some of Adam's charts. This is one that we've used a couple of times on the annual flow. But I don't like messing around with people's Excel sheets too often much. So I took what I'm used to taking, and spring break was last week. So we'll have some updated charts and stuff next week, because graphs are a lot easier to look at. But one thing I didn't get was your monthly flow.
Yeah, as Johnny mentioned, this was kind of rolled out during a time when we were out of office. But I can give you just a brief overview of how things are going. Operations of the plant going well, treating really good. Still managing our solids as we've talked about over the last bunch of months. Moving forward with that set of future projects, which we could. Operationally, we figured out a good way of keeping staff on our belt press and really getting some solids out of the system. So making good progress there. Lower pump station has been operating well. We're seeing around 490,000 gallons a day out of that. Heading up the mountain, we do have a couple warranty items on those soft starts. Both of the soft starts were provided for the 30 horse motors are failing, and so we're not operating with those currently. So we're working that through with our vendor to get some new soft starts down there. So give an update on that eventually here.
Adam, sorry, but what does that mean? What's a soft start?
Soft start is an item, a piece of equipment on the electrical system that ramps the motor up to feed the pump slowly, so it doesn't hammer the piping network. So
Pre-VFD, so it gives you a softer start, so you're not just banging this big equipment.
electrically, it
Yeah.
consumes less energy as well.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yep.
That's
Soft
when we get
start. That
our,
tells you right there, you remember, but
Act like I knew what you.
that's when we get our highest peaking factor and get our highest costs, is when the equipment starts up. So it's easier if we start it up, we can keep that.
Makes sense.
Volume wise in the ponds, we're sitting pretty good. We have roughly 27 million gallons of storage available in the big pond. So pretty good this time of year. Did a big transfer out of the big pond into
saw that.
irrigation pond the other week,
Yeah.
so.
Driving by and all of a sudden you see it pop up like that, you go, whoa.
Yeah.
Everything all right?
weeks to-
But then you have to look back in your rear view coming up and say, okay, that one's fun.
Yeah. Pond two, working with Scott and the A2S crew to get the dewatering and solids removal out of that pond. Things are moving good forward there. We need to wait for the ice to get off it to do some sampling. Then maybe pull a little more clean water off the top of that sludge layer before the vendor gets out here to clean it up. Hopefully this month we'll have that data. Yeah, we'll have you know, a lot of this information that Johnny has kind of put in here for placeholders is stuff we've kind of been presenting over the time that I've put these reports together, so we'll format it and put it in this document and it'll be easily digestible for y'all.
Well, I hope it's sustainable. I know you did a great job with the reports for the irrigation group that we had every other week. That was really helpful. That was a game changer. Which starts sometimes around the 4th of July, everybody's pushing the panic button. By the time we get some of that data, we can see the trending and see our soft landing in October. And I want to make sure with any of this information, Peter, Johnny, it's sustainable, that there's not so much work going into this that over time you say it's become a distraction on things you need to do. But this reporting, I think, can be great for kind of a separate side packet to share. Like you gave Taylor credit for the gross domestic product last time. I'll give him credit. I hear from Taylor. And it's always, hey, what are the pond levels? What are this? I'd love to have something I could just share with him because he's always enjoyed tracking your irrigation meetings and so on.
Sure.
And say, hey, this is where we're at. And the next generation, Gen 2 is killing it on some of these things. So this is dovetailing really well, but I don't want to make it so cumbersome that it's a challenge.
I don't think it'll be cumbersome. It's kind of just plug and play once the template.
Tracking, be updating is what it'll be more than anything.
Yeah, the graphs are really easy and that, when you look at a graph, let's pull Spanish Peaks up. I mean, we can put a lot of information in and we can verbally. So you get to see, it's easier to track without having to read a whole bunch of verbiage. So we like the graphs and they tell a story and then, we can put a lot of information in a document in just a few pages without the graphs and stuff.
One of the graphs we used to have in the packet was the nitrogen levels that we were achieving. Is that one of the ones you anticipate being in here in the future?
Yeah, Adam he was on vacation that week and I know where certain flow graphs and stuff are, but like I said, I don't like to mess around with Excel sheets that people have created and potentially go in there and do something wrong and mess up everything. Because some of his irrigation spreadsheet, that's a massive spreadsheet. A lot of information and stuff. So I stay on my lane and wait for them to probably come back. And
Appreciate it.
And they help provide that information. So
It's a great start.
Yeah, there'll be more to see here for sure.
The 4-legged table is pretty tight, and you're looking at flows, you're looking at storage, you're looking at treatment. And then it's just great to see where the community is. We talked about, and you can see that tracking. I won't use the term, but you can see the tracking through resort tax. You're not going to see it immediately, but you see it a few months later and say, wow, we were really killing it in the communities with collections and we were still down. And that's what I shared last month after our meeting. And then it was, well, do you have that information the other day? And I said, I'll get it. So now I've got a new wingman with me looking over my shoulder.
And I'm correct that our packets are, the information that's included in our packets are available.
Yes.
Online to the public, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Does someone have to request them or are they on?
No, they're
available.
When I send it out, it gets posted on the website under board packet. You can go get it and it's up there until the next one comes out. So, and if they want past ones, we have it archived. A lot of our stuff now is going to YouTube. So in the board packets under the minutes and stuff is the YouTube links to the videos that we recorded. And stuff too. So
I didn't realize that you could access that packet just by going online. Great.
Yeah, I think it should be that way. I'm glad to hear that it is. Because that's a lot of good information. It's a good story to tell on that. We need to continue to do a good job of getting that information out there.
Especially the treatment last month. That was great to hear.
Yeah, we're treating real good. I say one water coming out of that plant every day.
Good job. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
As you can see, we're down with production, but we've got the biggest thing there is that we've got a pretty big differential between what was billed and what we produced. We're gonna hopefully get some higher, some newer master meters. Those are our oldest, least accurate meters, are the very ones at the very beginning. So we can hopefully tighten that thing up. Along with a couple other things that we can account for the water usage that's not being metered. But Yeah, working with WGM Group with the water rights and place of use, and Scott's team with water master planning and modeling. Lead and copper sampling is end of May is when that's going to take place. We put in our initial PFAS sampling to a lab in California for the federal government and have yet to hear any results back from that. But yeah, that's basically the water operations thing in a nutshell.
And I don't want people to freak out on the water. It was just, we happened to be doing quarterly billing, so I asked Terry for the billed amount versus our production amount, but as Jake alluded to, you know, getting updated meters, we've got a lot of old meters, you lose efficiency over years, especially 20, 30 years. So the goal is to get that number down below 14%, which is the national average. So it seems high now, but we know the work we got to do to help better track the number, coordinating with the fire department, doing fire hydrant testing and flushing and other stuff where we can account for beneficial water loss. That's what we call that.
We'll build a little assembly with a meter on it for when they're doing their flow testing, so we can account for when they're doing that.
So the beneficial water loss is separate from your actual system water loss, and that's what we're targeting is the system water loss, all the leak detection and everything that the team is doing to track water leaks and major water leaks. We just had one, I think I got it in here, that was 700.
Yeah, so
700 gallons per hour, which is a pretty big water leak.
right, so our team goes through our data and it's not the most user-friendly platforms that we have to go through. So this one took a little bit to filter through to find, but it was 700 gallons an hour for about 20 days over at the golf course maintenance center.
Ooh,
Yeah.
do the math on that one.
Yes, it was a lot bit of money. Yeah, those guys, Fowler and the maintenance crew, Travis, they showed up immediately and fixed it. I'm very appreciative, obviously.
Yeah.
Sounds like the water was going somewhere where it didn't damage anything, so that was good.
So is the 20 million gallon delta out of the ordinary of what it normally is? Or is this something we've just started?
We just
making the
started
comparison?
putting numbers to it. We knew it was high, but this is the first that we're starting actually put numbers to it so we can start tracking it. Like with water leaks and stuff, we got, you know, our census stuff and we actually notify a lot of homeowners of potential leaks. We also get a lot of calls on people that are on the system, so we do encourage them to sign up. Because a lot of them is leaky toilets. How much a leaky toilet?
A leaky toilet's 110 to 150 gallons an hour.
Yeah, but
Those would
Those are
show up on this
metered, yes.
because they're billed.
Right.
So,
But we
so
still
this is
alert
happening
them.
somewhere between when we produce it
Right,
and where we.
this is pretty built-in meters.
that water smart is priceless. It really is I mean, it's as if you're stalking the person. Once it starts, it's like you get a text, you get an email, you get another text. It is such a great program.
Yeah, I'm on it. I had to lower my thresholds a little bit, but it saved me. I got a toilet that started leaking and got a notification and yeah, I wouldn't have known.
Toilets,
Yeah.
they're the worst.
Yeah,
And you're really saving them if it's an ice machine, plastic fitting,
right.
because you're saving them flooring and things like that. And you think about coming back after a bit. Okay. Thank you, great, thanks.
Peter gets 2 spots because he's got collection and distribution maintenance too, so.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
So with this being a new department, Peter and I are still working on the development of reporting for his area. But he is out in the field all the time. I just kind of put some of the criteria down, so he just to rattle it off from memory on all the stuff he's been doing the last month with this.
So along with the collection and distribution, we are doing the FOG program, like we said before. We're going out and dealing with people's issues that they had this winter, checking it out, getting it on the fix list. There's a couple of leaks that we know we have to fix, a couple sewer issues, the water main that needs to be moved up at the end of, get a is it Sioux?
Sioux.
Sioux Road. That's approximately 20 feet onto the property. So that's been in discussions. There's a list of stuff that we are working on. Manhole lining and inspections is part of asset management. We're also working with the sewer manhole modeling. I just got an email yesterday from Brad saying, hey, what needs to finish? We need to get some more GIS points on some manholes and then we can finish that up. And our team is doing a great job. It's really going well. And I'd like to also congratulate Jeff Hodges on passing his test, his water operator test. So we're just moving forward. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's going well.
One area that's been really encouraging is INIs over the last few years.
Oh, yes, sir.
And you guys had a blast this year. And that was a quick meltdown in the meadow at least. I know it's not gonna be that way in the mountain everywhere, but.
That was the question that I just asked Adam. Have we seen any INI? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah,
we
you got,
saw 810,000 gallons hit the plant on Saturday.
you did. Yeah, but I mean, that's a quick burn off. So you made great progress through the years on that. And that's what this is all about, this report. By the way, it will make our meetings a little longer. We're not gonna be out of here at 10 a lot of times, but I think it'll help us have clarity and sense of order on some of it. It's a complicated board now to try to understand it. And I think this helps with a little more of the detail, the granular. But INIs, you guys continue that progress. That is a big day, 810, but you did have pretty heavy house counts still on the mountain. It dropped like a rock on Sunday, so.
Pretty
There
sunny.
might have
here
been
on
some
Friday.
relationship with that.
Was it sunny here on Friday? Thursday and Friday, really sunny.
The weekend was gonna be big Easter weekend. So, well, great. Anything else?
Just the upcoming events, so at the end of the document, you kind of see 2 months, so next month you'll see May and June, so I'll get ahead and kind of let everybody know what's coming up. So we had a lot of stuff going on in April and a lot of stuff coming up in May. You've probably seen the little poster on the front door, but got Water Week coming up, and next week Jake and I will be in Billings at the AWW Joint Conference. Getting our hours and getting some training and education, so.
Big anniversary tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got,
That's big.
actually, we've had quite a few. Most of the staff, all the new staff has been here a year. Adam just cleared 3, I think Justin is 2. Yeah, Kate or Lindsay and Amy have been here a year, Rose and Matt and Katie had been here a year now. Jeb is coming off of 6 months of probation. Katie also got her 1C. We don't know about Rose yet. I think she's back today. So we'll find out if she's passed her 1C as well. So yeah, everybody's doing good and
It's a big year.
it's gone by quick.
Great.
And that's our report, so we can finish the consent agenda.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
There's a form included in here that ticks off attendance and all the voting. I haven't seen that one before, right?
That's new. That's our tracking form. I actually went back and utilized it on the last meeting. It was created for this one. It's part of our minutes. It's just easier to track all the action items and stuff. And just everything that we legally got to process in our minutes and stuff. So it's just trying to go in and put in all those notes in the photo editing and stuff like I was doing before. It's
Yeah.
just easier to create that sheet.
I think it's great. My question was more just what would it be used for? Because as I looked at it, had I not been at the meeting, I would have assumed that when we got to consideration of P Conklin annexation petition, that we approved that. By the way, it's shown here. So if we use it other than internally, it's probably something we just need to clarify that
Okay,
in that particular case, while we all voted in favor of the motion, but the motion was to
Denied, yeah.
not move forward with
Yeah.
that. So just
okay,
a thought there, but.
Yeah.
Especially in light of the fact that we're making this available to the public.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great addition.
okay.
Hey, anything else, John?
Nope, that's it.
Any comments on that? Consent agenda is usually over in about the first 5 minutes after Terry gives us a little update, and then it's done. So now the consent agenda today was almost 45 minutes. Great job taking an idea last month and really putting it into something I think that's going to be useful in the future. Comments from the board? Anything more or less?
I echo you. I think it's a lot of great information. I think we'll get more comfortable with what areas we need to hit each month, but the fact that this is available to us, available to the public, I think is great information.
What about possibly having this, and again, I know I keep getting back to the how many pages of having a separate link for this. When we get our board packet, and this is something to really distill it down for people that just want the bullet points. Anybody see that idea? Nobody likes that idea, all right. I just thought if you had a link just for that packet, you could send it to different people, but never mind.
17-page bullet point.
What is the page?
We're gonna be revamping the webpage, so we're gonna have the budget, we'll have the monthly financial stuff, and then we're gonna have this as a standalone document as well with the financial. But this is replacing the general manager's report that's been in your packet for 30 years, so I could send it as a separate link, but we include all of the financial stuff.
It's easy for us to put it on the website, we can do it.
It is, so yeah, we can.
We just want to love to share with people like a Chad and a Troy and a Taylor, and not to just.
Well, I
make a
see what you're
point.
saying.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I just see that maybe being pushed to the side. If we had a tight little report, I think it would
We
be.
can send it out separately.
I think we can send it to Troy, you probably won't read it. But he'll, this is interesting. That's what I was getting at. Not that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's a great start. So, all right. So now, what we usually do in the first 5 minutes, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. A second. I'll second. Everybody smiling. Okay, here we go. All in favor? Schrock with the thumbs up.
Aye.
Got it. Oh, Peter, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's kind of strange on the screen today. All of a sudden, we only have one person, then we have two.
I minimized it so we could see.
Got it. All right, we're gonna say that it passed unanimous. All right. Let's get on to business action. Spanish Peaks, second reading, the ordinance. No changes since the last one, so we're just buzzing right through it.
So, Mr. Chairman, Susan Swimley here. I don't see that Spanish Peaks has signed the annexation agreement. Do we have a signed annexation agreement?
I have it here.
Perfect. That was my concern. I don't want you until we get it signed. I didn't want it going forward. Otherwise, I have nothing.
Did you say it is signed?
No, I have it here for signature. I needed to get a hold of Mr. Olson there to get Matt Kidd to come down and sign the agreement.
Well,
You want me to take that back with me today?
So let me be clear. I don't want you voting on approving the second reading of this ordinance if we don't have a signed annexation agreement, because once you approve it, it's annexed and we have no way to get that agreement signed. And I believe they'll sign it, but it's the lawyer, trust but verify.
It was so close, John. It was just so close. It was almost even when Johnny said, I have it here, when you got to vote. No.
That was my fault, going through it for the first time.
Okay, so that we cannot take a vote on the second reading.
No.
We're not gonna celebrate, that's just, John, we'll get her done, that's it, we'll get her done.
Perfect.
All right.
Hey, can I grab that and take it? I'm gonna hold it right now. Can I grab it right now?
John, this is a long meeting. Should you have this? What's that?
Does it just require yours and?
No,
It's Matt's. Matt has to sign it.
Are you gonna try to come back today?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's been 6 years. What's another month?
What's another 2 hours if Matt's over having coffee?
I doubt he's there, so I'll get this back to you, and then we'll see you in May.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, John.
Okay.
Oh, that was a close one. Okay, do you accept?
No action on its managements.
Okay, what's the next one?
Except proposal from Amatics for the district audit.
Okay. Any, do you want to present on that, Johnny, or anything that we, or? Terry?
Well, I'd like to publicly thank Holmes and Turner for their years of service to us. They've been a great audit firm, and they've helped hold down our audit expenses. One of the first things I mentioned to other staff when we got the resignation letter is that this is going to change. The cost of this is going to change, and it has. We went out and approached 4 different accounting firms. We got 2 proposals back. Amatics is in Bozeman and comes with recommendations from our prior audit firm as well. They also recommended JCCS, who we did receive an audit proposal from. However, Amatics is a more thorough proposal that we received, and it's actually a lower bid. And so staff is recommending that Amatics be the new auditor for the Big Sky County Water and Sewer District.
Questions?
In that brief summary, you answered everything I was gonna ask.
It's pretty hard to debate that one, lower and more comprehensive. Any other comments? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve staff's recommendation that we accept the proposal from Amatics for the district audits.
Second, discussion?
I guess the one thing I should clarify, are we approving this for this year? Because there was a 3-year.
It's a 3-year.
Okay, so we're approving.
Yeah,
That's what I thought we were doing. Okay. No change to my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Al, second, Mike. Any other comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll take that as a yes. Drop. Okay. Moving on.
Okay, the next item is the estimated mill levy for 2025 for our water debt service. It's actually approximately the same amount that we levied last year. And we've got 2 more years of this. This will be paid off in July of 2027. The mill rate is calculated at 5.07 right now. That may change fractionally when we get the values from the counties on both Madison and Gallatin County, but I expect it to be right around there. The one thing I can say is that for our property owners is that a home in the Meadow Village with approximately $2 million value on it will pay about $140 for the year. And the Silver Bowl valued at about $720 will pay approximately $50. So
It's a good reference. Yeah. Remember what it used to be a home for $400,000 will pay X.
not anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
The numbers you just gave us are the annual amount or the per?
Annual, yeah.
Motion? I think you're up. Okay, second. Discussion? Peter, hopefully we're not just keeping you muted out there.
No, I'm all good.
All right, just double check. All in favor?
Aye.
Drop. A simple thumbs up in the future will work just fine. Okay, motion carried. Okay. Authorized TC hotel permit for 73 SFEs.
So in your packet was the boutique hotels permit. The permit SFE issue is 73.29, just above 25. So you guys needed to review it. It's 81 rooms, 4 stories. There's a restaurant, cafe and bar downstairs with 3 undesignated commercial spaces. There's a spa on the 2nd level. The rest is hotel rooms. Anyone have any questions about that?
And Amy did the audit on it to make sure. and it-
Yeah,
And
went
it
through.
dovetailed, just
Right.
confirmed. All right.
I guess, remind me, I know we've gone over this before, remind me why there are water pick charges but not sewer pick charges.
It's the agreement with town center.
That's right.
Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Goes all the way back to 1972.
They will never.
I knew there was a.
It said sewer, it didn't say water.
Right.
Okay.
So this is one of the first ones too that we've implemented our irrigation pick charges on those, so you'll see that there. And we are extending the sewer and water main to connect this building, so that'll happen first, and then they'll build. Any other
Got it.
Where's
questions?
it located?
It's right next to Tips Up, right? Yeah,
It's one lot over from
Yeah.
Tips Up, so if you look due east of the temporary stage that's next to Tips Up,
Yeah.
that's where that lot is, so 150 Town Center Avenue.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the application.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Peter's muted, but that's okay. Peter, we're gonna take that as an
Yep.
aye. Got it. A little choppy today on these. Do we lose shot? No, I'm sure he's there somewhere.
No, he's there. I just
Got it.
shut it down so we
Okay. All right, on to committee reports. Compliance Committee. Peter, this is usually your wheelhouse.
At that Peter, make it.
I would defer to Scott, maybe has a more recent update. We've not met in the last month to discuss progress on the pilot studies at all, so maybe Scott could update us.
Scott, anything to report?
No, just still taking samples and we've got a couple more months before we have a finished data set, and it's not gonna be perfectly clean, and get another bite at this, and then we should start with fresh boiler burners or hot water. Elements. It's challenging to do this test, but seeing scale on both alternatives, salt-based and TAC. It's just that appears to be a different type of scale and where it collects.
Any questions for Scott?
Do you know how many more months we have left? Do you recall? I don't
I
remember.
think it's on 2.
Scott, why don't you come on up to the table, just in case Peter has anything to ask you as well, but we can have it in the record. I don't think you'll be able to hear that as part of our minutes.
Yeah, I think we're doing a 6-month
That's what
pilot.
I thought too.
The first month, we had some fitting issues, and then we needed to change out elements in the boiler and got all that stuff, so that put us like a couple months behind. So I think we've just now got 3 months on what we're doing.
Yeah, and the TAC seems to be somewhat preventing the scale on the heating element, but there's scale collecting in the bottom of hot water tanks. Scale on the salt-based water softener, there's still some collecting. May not come out of this with a great black and white.
That was the question. It sounds like we're getting into a gray area again. But if the goal was black and white, is a gray acceptable in an either or scenario on recommendations?
Well, I think what you'll get from us is what we can quantify and an opinion on this portion. Then we do it again up in Mountain Village. We get a cleaner test. The idea would be to weigh those elements periodically and see how much scale is actually collecting on the element. But if there's still scale collecting in the bottom of the hot water tanks, then that's just it's appears to be chunky. And that may not just roll out of there by opening up the spigot on the bottom of your tank. So neither may be great.
So not either or, but neither may be great.
This is preliminary.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we know if the residents in the units notice the difference?
I don't know that. We've been a little leery of that because you just get such a wide range of how much water folks are using. Whether they worry about shower doors and glassware. Trying to stay out of maybe the subjective of residents.
That's a good one to stay on though. It's be good to have at least some data on this down the line. Okay, thanks, Scott.
I guess the reason I asked that is, I mean, are people putting in the salt-based systems because they're worried about their hot water tank and elements, or they're putting them in because?
I think that at least the people that I've talked to had said they're worried about their hot water tank. Or they were replacing the hot water tank.
And that's what
Really, so I don't know, I think over 50% would to protect their system, not just the harsh water. Although pretty tough in your hair in the meadow if you don't have one.
I think the commercial side is definitely what Brian said, they're trying to protect. Plumbing, residential apartments, it's. What I worry about is it's just a de facto slamming in the salt-based water softener because there's good sales folks in the area and it's what you do without thinking. Long term, we wanna.
They see it on TV and they say, I'll take one of those.
Yeah, or everybody else is doing it, it's just what you do, property management.
Or they see an ad with somebody running around with a conductivity meter and just, oh, your water's bad, or, you know, a TSS meter, not realizing it's minerals and stuff that's supposed to be there. So, you know, it's the industry in the whole that we've always battled, but, you know, doing what's right for the system and also our system as well as the community. Just because of what we do up here, so it's not gonna be easy, but yeah, probably definitely a gray area and what the district feels comfortable supporting, so we haven't quite got all that information to make that recommendation.
Great. All right, anything else, Peter? Manka?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for the update, guys.
All right. Budget CIP? Johnny, who you want to handle that?
I think that we could just roll that down into our budget proposal. We got Ryan Graff on to give a presentation, and then let Terry speak, and then yeah, we can go from there if you would like.
Great. One thing about that committee, you guys have really, you're making headway again in having a structure for consideration on this budget CIP. I think they've been probably one of the more productive subcommittee meetings now, just to see how it's going to be managed and prioritized and a system, you know, there's that sheet that you went through. So I think from a committee perspective, what you've done is really helpful. Unlike the Flatiron Committee, Chris, what do you have for us? Chris, we got to ask you, you talked about some different things at our last committee meeting. I think we had a committee meeting, but it was more a Q&A for you, how to understand the expectations for the future. We talked about everything from INIs in that meeting. Do you have any updates for this committee, this board from that last committee meeting?
No, we're kind of waiting for you guys to get through the stuff, get working on the annexation. But meanwhile, like I said, I think in the last meeting, we're starting to work on engineering, water and sewer, but also all the other pieces of the Flatiron puzzle. So really moving out of the planning stage and more into the tactical engineering stage now, and kind of expect that to accelerate over the summer. I'll probably have more news next month.
Yeah, for me, I've met with A2S's modeling team. I've already given them a heads up. They had Julie and Mr. Cusick on as well, so got a rundown of what they could expect to see. As soon as we see some plans, we'll get that over to them to run some scenarios through our water modeling, and then I meet with Susan this Friday to get the outline of the agreement in place. place so we can start passing that back and forth.
Sounds like a time when you definitely want to be talking about the engineering from the flow meter or from a gallon's flow-based agreement at this point in time. You'd hate to get too far ahead and then say, wow, we're gonna need X amount of these. We only planned on this number, so. It's good timing and keep us posted. I
And I think the ball's in our court, I'm working with the district.
Got it.
Engineering.
Great.
That part is, yes. Sorry to get it over to the monitors.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on Flatiron? Anybody want to cover? Pretty simple. Go into old business, and this ties back into the budget CIP. Proposed 2-year rate structure, 25 through 27. And this would, you want Ryan to handle this then?
Yeah, Ryan has, this is the presentation that he presented to the committee. And I don't think we made a whole lot of changes to it. So Ryan, if you want to take over, I got your presentation up.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Board, I appreciate you having me back to discuss the rate recommendations for FY26 and FY27. Maybe for those of you who aren't on the budget and CIP committee, the last time you saw any of these basic rate recommendations, I think was last fall. We have been working pretty hard, I think, over the last 4 to 6 months to really fine tune the CIP itself, which is a large factor in what rate recommendations look like, as well as getting some updated information from Terry on as he starts thinking about the preliminary FY26 budget. And so there's been a lot of work both on the staff level, and I really appreciate the engagement from the subcommittee members as we do work through the actual options and then the implications of those alternatives. So what we have in front of you today is a kind of an updated presentation that we last gave to that budget and CIP committee, which reviews the current planned capital projects for the next 2 years, really. We did have 2 rate alternatives for the sewer side of rates. And there is one that is, I think, the recommendation of both mine and the CIP committee itself. And that's the one you see with that star there on the sewer side, where we look at, okay, how can we really adjust that base rate in a little bit faster pace than the volumetric rate? There were a couple options that was reasons that was the preferred option. As you may remember us talking about in the past, Big Sky is really a kind of a high seasonality system, right? And so what that means is that you have, depending on the year, you have more spikes in volume in one area versus the other. And so because of that, and because of the rental base too, the transient nature of it, we've started, when we made past rate increases, it was more of a flat increase, and what happened over the last few years as we continue to do that flat increase is more revenues coming from the volumetric side. And so what we're trying to accomplish with that option 1 on the base is to kind of adjust the revenue breakdown between that base or the fixed predictable amount every quarter and the volumetric rate, which will vary depending on the usage, to really kind of get back to that 60-40 split between the base and the volumetric. And so that's really what we're looking at there. I don't, maybe before we go on too much further, Johnny, we do have that list of projects on the past 2 slides. As the budget continues to be put in front of you, you'll see those more and more, and they'll continue to be refined and kind of incorporated. But this is really I think a much finer point to that pen, and where they sharpen their pencils a lot on a staff level to really put some definition to those capital placeholders that we had last fall. And so it's, I think, a really nice job of being able to kind of give you guys as a board insights into the actual activities that they're planning over the next 2 years.
And I'll speak to more of the CIP here later and the modeling and thinking behind it.
Yep. So if you then go back down, I think to slide 5 there, the sewer rate option. So what you see there is what the actual rates would be on the base versus the volumetric. And so looking at that 10% to the base increase and then the 5% on the volumetric. The residential volumetric stays below $10 a thousand. The maybe thing to note there is that you will, if you compare yourself to, down the mountain in the Bozeman, big Belgrade area, you are going to look higher on the volumetric rate, but you have a much different type of treatment, much different type of user base, and I think really the kind of first in class system that really looks to protecting the environment. So it's a lot of different constraints on your system, and so it's not necessarily really comparable against those rates as well. On the next one, resulting from those is we are projecting a use of reserves in FY26. A lot of that is related to, and I think I always call it the biosolids project, but it's the filter press, right? The belt filter press, as they look to really integrate that change in technology to how they are drying those solids. And then back in FY27, we are projecting a slight surplus as we're looking to kind of refill the reserves again after using them up in or some of them up in FY26. Maybe real quick too, and I can speak to it on that reserve chart as well. We are still planning on contributing to the depreciation reserve in FY27. In FY26, we're using a lot of those funds to fund capital. And so that's, as a committee, one of the things we talked about is instead of, as we look to refine that depreciation number based on a set target for that capital reserve, and looking at the reinvestment that's happening throughout the system as a whole as well. Often what we do when we look at that is, okay, how much principal are you paying down on your debt, right? How much new capital are you putting in on an annual basis to really continue to increase the value of your system? And so that from the rate side, and it's a little bit different from the accounting side, right? But as we look at how the rates you need to bring in to really continue to increase your system value and contribute to reserves, that's the math that's working behind the scenes. And on the next one, you are going to see some the increases to your cash balances moving forward as we kind of project. And those FY28 through 30 rates aren't actually approved yet, and so that will always change. But these are the initial projections. So. On the water side, much more straightforward, looking at that 5% annual increase to both fixed and volumetric rates. Water reserves growing, you did start lower than on the sewer side. And so we are putting more, and there's less kind of overall demand on capital from your principal and that debt service you have. And so we are looking to reserve more of it at this point than and continue to grow those reserves so that as you kind of plan your future water supply needs, you do have that available to reinvest into the system.
Which is a good thing because it's getting ready to start.
Yeah. And then following this, we have some typical bills. And as many times as I looked at it, Johnny, I meant to delete this slide. I think the better ones are on the next slide. Yeah, and so here, really kind of targeting, looking at select volumes at the 18,000 gallons a quarter, which is about 6,000 a month, which is still, I think that's kind of a baseline for a family of 4 using the water. 45 is a little bit higher, but I wanted to show kind of people that are maybe watering their lawns or something, so you kind of get a sense of how much theirs would increase. Overall, on the residential side, because of how we've structured that increase to the sewer, really overall increase of less than 5%. Same percent increase roughly on the commercial side, and just showing a couple different use cases there. So. And with that, those the recommendations, again, maybe to recap on the sewer, I would say a 10% increase to the base and a 3% increase to the volumetric. And then on the water side, a 5% increase across the board for your users.
Okay. Put this lovely little memo together that kind of highlights the budget. There's no questions for Ryan.
Are we going to, is the board going to accept that proposal of the 10 and the 3 before we move
We're
on?
not.
We're not.
Yes, we're proposing.
Okay.
So we gotta do public hearing and then actually take it.
Hey, I had a question for Ryan. If could ask just on the base versus volumetric type approach. The reason for taking that on the sewer side but not on the water side.
Yeah, on the water side, what I was looking at when making that kind of across the board percent increase is really on the volumetric. With the tier structure, a lot of those, the increase to the tier kind of does send that pricing signal about the value of the water within there. And so looking at how they were structured at this point, it seemed that prudent to continue to have the across the board on the volumetric side as well. And so some of it was professional judgment just on how the rates themselves were there. But for the most part, that's what I was looking at when I made that initial recommendation.
And what would be the difference between the sewer and the water to take a different approach there if we did go volumetric on the sewer side?
Maybe to restate it, with the tier structure on the water side, a lot of that pricing signal that comes in tier 3, 4 after you get past tier 2 is to encourage conservation, right? And so with that in mind, that's where I didn't want to decrease the increase to volume, the volumetric, and so that's why it was held consistent with the base increase.
And sewer being different because
on the sewer side, a lot of the difference right now is when you think about how you do have capacity at the plant, right? But for the most part, there's a lot more of a lag between how you can control that excess sewer usage, right? It's not watering lawn, for example. You don't have that tier 3 and 4 that is easily adjustable by the end user. That's really the stuff that is much more day-to-day, washing laundry, washing clothes, doing dishes, going down the drain. It's not something that is as discretionary.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so in the board packet, there's a proposed budget. This proposed budget is based on the recommended rates that we just went through with Ryan. Also in the packet, we have a write-up with all the highlights that is both available to all the public now on our website, and the board received last week. You've got, I'll not, because we're going to have a budget hearing next month, we'll go deeper into it at the budget hearing with specific questions, but this list goes through the highlights that there's significant changes and or information that the public should know about with respect to our budget. So I'll just kind of go through a summary over the period. So with respect to the new rates, with a 10% on the base on the sewer, a 3% increase on the volumetric charge, and on the water side, 5% to both. We're looking at approximately 8.75% in additional revenues. Within the operating budget itself, the operating expenses are projected to go up by 4.19%, which is in line with what inflation is this past year. Another area with respect to the new plan is there a lot of the expenses that we were going to incur. We didn't know what we were going to get hit with this fiscal year. Our projections were pretty close. I went through with Adam. I went through his numbers and made some adjustments. Nothing too great except for the biosolids that we weren't anticipating. But it's not enough to really change too much on the sewer side. With the additional revenue, with the increase in rates, our operating loss is going to be approximately 5% less. We're still in the $2.5 million range, but again, that's a non-cash item, our depreciation expense. We've got a $2 million depreciation expense on the sewer side, about $500,000 in depreciation on the water side. So whether we're able to put any money into reserves is a long shot this year, as Ryan alluded to. But if the numbers can, we may be able to. With respect to the capital budget, we've got $3.8 million on the sewer side that we're going to attempt to do this year. On the water side, we've got $800,000 in capital items that we're going to attempt to do. Both of which are within our capacity with our reserves, our current reserves. So if the budget pans out, we'll still have approximately $6.4 million on the sewer side and $1.5 million on the water side, which leaves us in a fair position. On the non-operating side, there are three major areas where we collect revenue: the plant investment charge on the sewer side and the system investment charge on the water side. We're expecting to collect approximately $600,000 plant investment charges on the sewer side and $250,000 in system investment charges on the water side. The other item in the non-operating area is the resort tax, where we'll be collecting $3.3 million, and that's for debt service on the new plant. The biggest expenses on the non-operating side are our interest expenses on the loans that we have. The First Security Bank loan, approximately $40 million that we owe, and SRF loan approximately $900,000 outstanding on that. This next year, the variables with respect to the tariffs, we don't know what that's going to do to our expenses. We'll adjust accordingly when we run into them. We've only had seen one so far, but if those tariffs go in, you may need to change a few other line items based on that. Any questions on the overall budget that was presented in the packet to the board?
Here, I just want to clarify on the narrative. If you could go to the narrative, the first page.
Yep.
We talk about the rate increases. And then there was a statement in there about the rate increases to vacant lots. And in the narrative, we say it's 10% for sewer and 3% for water.
On the vacant lots.
Why isn't that 5% on water? Increase on water to users is 5%. Why isn't?
I think it is 5.
Okay.
5, my typo.
Okay. That's.
Yeah.
That would be more, that would be consistent.
Yeah, it
So,
is. The vacant lot charges, Ryan, am I correct? The increase will be the same for them.
Yeah, I think that's just a typo with the 3% base water, because it was a 5% base to the increase to the water.
And then I think there's one, the aerial budget.
The aerial photographer?
Yeah.
No, it's
The LiDAR.
10,000,
Yeah,
approximately
that's,
10,000, and so there's 5,000 on each side.
Okay.
that's our portion. There's three of us going in to get the LiDAR. It's done every few years. Just thinking I got a call from somebody in my city. Something we participated in the past to get the LiDAR of the area, but we're not the only ones that use it, so it's a cost share.
Okay, and then I just wanted to kind of make a general statement that hasn't been made and something that I know the committee factored in a lot and we discussed a lot through this process. When you look at, you know, a budget and we're looking to approve a deficit in the first year of, what was it, almost $1 million on the sewer side. Part of that is intentional in that we're keeping in mind that we have a plant that's built for much more capacity than just our current users. And so as we are looking at these increases and looking at our budgets, we're trying to be mindful of the fact that we don't want to put the entire burden of the cost of that fact on the current users. So we're trying to be a little bit more intentional about slowly increasing these rates. So as we add users, they're contributing to some of that cost as well. And not, again, just putting that cost on the current users. So it's a struggle, and that's a big reason why, you know, we looked at initially a much larger increase to get us closer to where we need to be. But when you take that into consideration, it's hard to put that burden on someone that's chosen to build earlier than somebody else that's going to build next year or in 5 years. So I wanted to just remind the board of that, if you weren't part of those discussions, and also the people that are here. That was a big consideration.
I don't think we've ever had so much data and visual, the PowerPoint, everything going into one of this consideration. Right down to your narrative here is so helpful. And it just came into focus. Ryan, I give you a lot of credit for having those resources available the last 2 CIP meetings. So.
And I will say that some of these numbers are going to change. The revenue is going to be worked on a little bit more. And some of the expense line items, we don't have a full 9 months of expenses into this presentation yet, because they haven't been booked yet. They're coming in, and so once we get the full 9 months in, there may be some adjustments to some of the line items. Nothing I expect to be too significant. It's going to change what you're looking at here, but there will be some minor changes before this packet is sent out for budget hearing next month, where we'll go through with finer detail line items and questions from both our board members and the public for this public hearing that we'll have.
So we need to adopt this in time. When did you want to adopt the rate structure? Vote on it? This isn't an action item.
It'll be at the hearing next month.
It'll be at the hearing next month, we'll have the rate hearing, and then.
But when do then we'll vote on it in the June meeting? Yeah, just want to make sure I understood that. As far as the budget CIP, similar cycle because the two are dovetailed. You got it. So in June, we have to have this in place, ready to go, no delays for the next.
Yeah, and whatever comes from our May meeting at the hearing, any changes will be incorporated and then presented for final passage at the June.
And that'll be in our required timelines. Great. Just want to make sure we're not behind. We're right on track.
No, we're right on track. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
On track. So just a brief overview, something new, this cycle is the separation of the CIP from the budget in a standalone document. As you see here at the end of the narrative, we have over a dozen projects listed out that we've been talking about. CIP is at the chart. This is for the district and the team to prioritize, identify, and plan projects as we move forward. So you got water line replacements and upgrades. We got well abandonments that we're doing 2 this year. We've identified that, we're going to start closing out test wells and stuff. So the CIP and the project sheets, the superintendents and their team we'll create project sheets that will be submitted, and everything will be prioritized and put in the CIP. So in the CIP, you see the main body of it, you got water and sewer. And eventually, you'll also see fleet management, and then you'll also see the reuse side as that infrastructure gets built. But we've got this section for projects that are getting identified. Hey, we're aware of them, but now we're starting to work them through the system. This is where we start prioritizing them. We start putting them through criteria and budgeting, and then you start seeing them up here in the main body that they're ready to go, and now we're putting them in the queue to fund them. And then over on the side, you'll see, you know, the district share, what we're looking to pay for, any outside, you know, funding that we can get, like for the lead and copper, we've got funding from the state for that. And then if we plan on taking any projects to BizRad and asking for funding for BizRad, then those are identified in this time frame to get in cycle with their application process. So we'll be fully aware and have it all mapped out on what we're doing, and we can plan into the future. So this overall CIP right now is $11 million. And this is covering, you know, the next 5 years, but it also projects stuff out. So working with reserves and capital and operating funds and where things are getting, you know, targeted. So like our meter replacement and stuff like that. And it lays it all out and how we're going to do all this work, and then how we're going to fund it and pay for it. So as we alluded to, a lot of it's coming out of reserves for this year because it's work that we need to get done, and we can continue to coordinate and plan and project how we're going to do that. So
it's a big year, a lot of information. One thing, of course, it's not in the cycle and until the voting comes through with BizRad and so on. We're on the record of hearing that 2026 with BizRad is the year of the water and sewer district. So we got to start at least thinking about and factoring this in. Other things you're seeing, I think you're doing a great job with community outreach with a lot of the things over at BizRad, including or even at Firelight, how much community outreach is going there. We just can't forget that for something like Firelight, something like the Canyon we're about to get a report on, we got to start thinking about this plant expansion, I think, sooner rather than later, to prepare even for next year. We're not going to go over and distract Danny or anybody right now, but over the course of the summer, we need to have a schedule, something that says these are the needs if we're to take on these projects. So I'm confident that something like Firelight will come through. That'll be a trigger along with the Canyon at the same time. So we'll have to factor in what our goals are financially and that how we're going to handle that. So
quick question. How do we, or how will we, when we go from these budget numbers in the CIP, which are based on an educated guess, or good educated guess, to actual bidding this out, what does that process look like?
So to get up in there, a lot of it is engineering estimates, and then we'll add a 20 or 25% safety contingency factor to that. And then when we like the water line movement, that's a contracted piece of work. We put out a statement of qualifications and get quotes and bids. We know what that budget number is, and then if it comes in over that budget number, then to the board that hey, we budgeted this amount, but these are the bids coming in.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking a little bit different question than that piece. How do we get the best price?
From our competitive bidding, when we put it out for bid, we'll look for 3 quotes.
Is that what we do? We always get at least 3?
Yeah, I prefer 3 quotes.
Yeah.
So when we put it out, I mean, if we don't get 3 bidders, you know, we try to stimulate people and stuff, but if we get 2, then we look at the criteria and how they can best fill the bang for the buck.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is always challenging to approve a budget amount to spend in a public meeting where that contractor can be listening, going, okay, guess I know the number, right? I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to get the best dollar, and it sounds like we are.
Yeah,
But I think that's gonna be important.
Well, we've had a couple of recent bumps in the road where our cost estimates were 3 to 4 times, I think, on one in particular, centrifuge.
Right.
And I didn't want to go there, but the other thing, and Al, you said, how do we get that? Expand the area scope, you know, if you gotta go into the Dakotas or Idaho, whatever the case, you guys are the experts, but I can tell you what some of the major projects that we've done in the mountain in the past, you've got to expand those areas sometimes. You're getting a lot more out of Salt Lake, things like that, you know, people have started coming up. So we're just gonna have to get better at these, whether it's tariffs or whatever the pressure's on. There just has to be a structure in place, but yeah, great question.
Yeah, we negotiate pretty hard. You know, even like with Central Square, we went back and forth and, you know, asked for considerations and, you know, so. We do our best to get the best price. I think the E2S with the water master. But that was a good negotiation.
Good for them or good for us?
Good for us.
Al had a good point. When you put a number up there, that's the number all of a sudden that people are backing into. You go, wait a minute. I think we have a couple things going on like that. So, all right.
So the next steps is we'll get out public notice for the hearing for next month. So great hearing, budget hearing next month, and then we'll take that, and then any changes that come out of that will be in the final proposed budget for adoption.
Okay. All right, projects. We on to projects? Yep. Everybody else set? Thank you, Ryan. Scott. At the table.
Treatment plant, warranty work, furnace filter installation, still lower motor troubleshooting. Some potentially some voltage filters on there to knock down any voltage spikes and stretch these motors like. I think that's going to work out. Be doing that for the next couple of weeks. And then assisting Adam with dewaring capacity constraints. So this has come up a few times already. This is mixed across a bunch of different projects here, but essentially what has happened is you all paid over $800,000 to clean the sludge out of Column 2 during construction. Now we're getting ready to do it again. We have a contract Johnny signed and Susan helped us with for, depending on how much solid they pull out, somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 again. And we should never have to do that again, but it's all going through the back end of the plant now, which is why the cost to process that and increase that, and the cost of the centrifuge project is going up. You know, so my point being that while those costs are going up to actually process it through the plant and send it to composting or to Logan, shouldn't have $1.5 million worth of sludge removal from Pond 2 ever again. Just keep that in mind. And I believe also in the CIP, you have under that project, it just says Pond 2 clean out, and Ryan, you can chime in here. It's listed at like $1.5 million.
Yeah.
The cost for Denali is like $750. You have the cost for the liner replacement somewhere.
It's awesome.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody understands that. And Ryan,
I want to interrupt. To your point, that was the due diligence on the team to get a good, fair price. So we went to Synagro. Synagro gave us a number. And then we also contacted Denali. Unfortunately, there's only a handful that can do it to this scale. So that was, we got.
And was it in your report or in your report where it said the contract was included, but it wasn't in the package that I saw? I don't remember who's.
Wasn't, we signed the agreement with Denali.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just zone defense there, so they split the seams on us, so yeah, I could have included it in mine.
I just read it, then I started looking for it and never found it, so.
Yeah, apologize. We got a draft going with Denali, put it in front of Susan, make sure you all have indemnification, limitation liability, all that fun stuff. Had the quote from Denali in there, John signed it, but to the point that the money was already budgeted in Glacier Bank's drawdown. And Terry, I think you had 1.5 million in there as a placeholder. We had a higher number from Senate Grove, we got that down with Denali. But you will also, correct me if I'm wrong, gonna be able to do the lining under that number.
The what we took to the bank at the end of the loan was the clean out and replacement. So the liner, this is one of the original ponds. So the new liner is a double walled liner with leak detection built into it. So we opted for the more robust liner for that. So this will also clean out the aeration piping and all this stuff that was in there. And basically we're taking the opportunity to rehab the pond, clean it out and realign it.
When all says done, you'll pay the $1.5 million to clean those biosolids out twice. In addition to what you pay on litigation, like back to your message, like that budget news is not. It's not really apparent that all that's behind there, right? Going on, so it's not as bad as it. The performance of the plant is really exceptional. I think Adam's being too humble to the point of reducing operations expenses. He's not used any chemicals on the liquid side at all, and it's getting way beyond Class A-1 water facility. So,
What's the threshold for Class A1?
5 milligrams per liter in total nitrogen, and he's been routinely around 2.5.
Yesterday.
Which is kind of unheard of.
Yesterday?
Yes.
So.
Gotta put that headline news.
So we're in a year from now, we're gonna be filling a double walled pond with, I'll give you 3. 3, I mean. Yeah, that's.
Adam did a really good job last year. We had significant reduction last year. We thought it was gonna take a little bit longer with the plant startup, but the ponds were completely turned over from Adam's operation last year, and we had really good numbers in last year's irrigation season. So we get to start out that way this year with the operation that just got going.
The limited technology on nitrogen removal and wastewater is 3, so he's beating that.
And Class A1 gives us more options to be able to use the water. So we could expand irrigation and all the other stuff that we're looking at to do with it.
Reuse booster station. We don't need to go there. It's still just nailing down the land use permit. County and Spanish East. YC1, as Adam alluded to, you were basically handling that with Western Industrial, having to need a bunch of James's help, but if you do, you can draw on. Always good. Okay. Canyon, I'll just maybe park that, or we want to roll in Mason's input
Right
here.
there behind you, so.
You capture and roll on all of them.
Okay. Continue to coordinate with the Canyon. The subcommittee is Al and Jared. Still continue to meet. You are working on an interlocal agreement with the Canyon, correct?
Yeah, I believe Susan and Tara are working on that.
Eventually, an MOU, the MOU will be about the actual money cost model. The interlocal agreement is just about ownership of the project. Regulatory challenges, met with DEQ, finally had a good meeting with DEQ. on the deviation request. It was all verbal, so we've updated the deviation request per what we heard and sent it to DEQ for complete approval. If it's not an approval, then there'll be an opportunity for a hearing where we'll want some of you to come up with us.
Be happy to.
You keep going, then I'll supplement. Candy District.
As far as US Forest Service and NDT, those hurdles still need to be jumped. Just yesterday, Forest Service raised the bar on the geotech. So we're working that out with Craig Nato at TD&H, and we'll have a revised scope and fee from them to go run their tests in the pinch point of the canyon, particularly around the Chalk Bluff, but the pinch point there with the Bighorn, they're very nervous. NDT is understandably very nervous about that spot, and so we're going to have to do above and beyond geotech there to prove it. Open trenching, not really. Schedule. So we're done with the 60% on the 64 side. I believe you all are done 60% on the canyon side. So we'll walk you through that, I believe, Thursday. Yeah. So your team and Adam and Peter included, hopefully, can take a look at where we are. That's just what would go out for procurement of the GCC and the general contractor construction manager. So we get quals and guaranteed maximum price with big contingency. So it's not a bid with those documents. And then sign them up for what we call pre-construction services, not for actual construction because we don't have an interlocal agreement or the MOU signed yet. We would need those in place before we would sign them up for construction. So you can feel safe about contracting for pre-construction services. Basically just putting the contractor on the team with the engineering. The only updates I've got.
Okay, so I think Scott covered at least half of what I was wanting to highlight, but I did want to recap. A lot of the January focus was Maui factors, which that's not a DEQ regulation, but it became this highlight point based on waterkeeper coordination. Those Maui factors are time, distance, and then 5 other variables that we're evaluating in terms of whether this should be reviewed under a groundwater discharge permit program and a surface water discharge permit program. With that homework, from an engineering standpoint, we kind of presented to the Canyon District. We still think we're in the realm of groundwater discharge permits. So they went ahead and submitted that application to get that rolling with DEQ. So DEQ will do kind of their completeness review. We'll continue to evaluate those Maui factors, and it's basically a fate transport analysis that kind of characterizes in the specific locations we're proposing to discharge, what are those nuances? And MBMG just released their canyon area report. So that now gives us a reference to go back to our analyses and basically gut check where we're landing. So that's kind of the biggest update, that the Canyon District did in fact submit a discharge permit application. It's in DEQ's court. We'll keep working with them. It sounds like it's
Groundwater discharge.
Groundwater, yeah.
Just want to clarify that.
And no matter when if I ever say surface water discharge permit, it means we're still going to groundwater, but if we at any point pivot to a surface water discharge permit, we're not pivoting to how we're discharging. It would just be how is DEQ reviewing it, and it becomes, we'll say 10x the tentacles of ecological sensitivity and a whole array of stuff that, just becomes variables. But at no point will the canyon be proposing a physical surface water discharge. We're just evaluating the regulatory review.
Got it.
So that application is in, DEQ's reviewing it. And we will review the MBMG study to see if that, shines a light on anything we didn't expect, and then coordinate again with DEQ where they're landing after they review our application. So that's the discharge permit status. Johnny and I did grab lunch with Guy just so he knew we were hearing him, hear his take. I'd say the synopsis there is he'd loved it to go through a surface water discharge permit review. Just because I'd say that heightened bar of what you vetted against. I think that's still a debate that ultimately the joint committee, I'd look to get, what's the water attorney? DGS, yeah.
No, nothing.
Yeah, DGS, so this gets into a realm of Clean Water Act. And so at our next joint committee meeting, it would be ideal to get kind of that feedback of stick with the groundwater discharge permit realm that's completely relevant versus maybe in one of our outfalls, it makes sense to go with surface water or whatever that legal advice might be. So that'll be a likely topic of the next joint committee meeting. The second component of that meeting is this paperwork for getting the official ILA and joint committee and project committee established. And the third component is always funding. So I'm preparing an agenda with those 3 items for the joint committee meeting. And I want to make sure we pin down a day, ideally in the next 2-ish weeks to meet. And I've got Monday and Tuesday, 4/28 and 4/29 as the starting point dates. Jared, Al, anybody?
I'm out 28, 29. Might have a tougher time once that resort closes that week, but you know, one point you'd be thinking about, one point I think we need to be really careful when just listening to you now, and even at the last meeting, commingling surface and groundwater, commingling those terms somewhat. I understand from a review process and application process, the differences. We just need to make sure that it's so clear to the community, both Canyon and district community, that the surface water, this is not a surface water, even though the way you said the review just now, I went, okay.
Yeah, at no point are we doing a bait and switch and switching to a surface water to the discharge.
Well, and when you submit the permit, it may be, I won't say interpreted, but reviewed with surface water criteria, but it is not a surface water, even though it may be interpreted that way.
Correct.
Does that make sense? You gotta be so careful with that term. It's so inflammatory.
Yeah,
that's all.
correct. Heightened review to surface water level review, but never surface water.
Heightened review to surface water, but submit groundwater.
Yeah.
Rapid infiltration basins.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I'm out. I just.
And that would be triggered by DEQ determining that, hey, now that we've looked at this.
Yeah.
It's a surface water review.
Yes and no. This Maui factor is more of a Clean Water Act nuance. And as we kind of run some of these numbers by DEQ, they're supportive of this falls in the groundwater discharge permit realm, but they're also saying it gets elevated to almost legal interpretation that's beyond their engineering interpretation sometimes. So, yeah.
I just hate to see you take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. It's so sensitive. So great. And I'm glad you're saying it here and with everyone so that someone really wants to understand that they can go back to whatever minute we are in the meeting and hear it clearly. Because I don't want to explain it to them.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. We're planning on a few FAQs on the Canyon website, whether it's the groundwater discharge nuances, whether it's the TED nuances of financing this project and so forth. So that will be available to point people to as those questions arise.
To answer your earlier question, 28th is wide open for me.
Okay.
I could do earlier on the 29th, but I prefer the 20th.
Start at 28th.
I'm good that week.
Okay. We'll target the 28th. I'm gonna check with Chad Wilson. I got John's blessing. So we'll get that.
I can call him.
done.
Hey, get out of Dodge. Who needs your help? This is Mississippi and he comes back.
You were gonna see if one of the others.
All of a sudden you're wide open.
So that's my general update. There's more details, but.
He's online. He was, I let him in. I don't know if he's on. He's not on now. He was.
I'll bring him up to speed.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Mason and I have continuously talked through like, what does it mean in terms of the interlocal agreement MOU? That we don't exactly have disposal reuse nailed. I think we can work that out so that it's
cash in lieu of reuse disposal capacity if it never comes to fruition for some legal reason or whatever. And the reason I bring it up is there's no reuse project in the CIP right now. It's the projects that you had asked us to put together kind of a prioritization of reuse projects or best return on investment, whatever we want to call it, the lowest NPV. We're doing that, but there's no project in the CIP because we would count on some reuse disposal in the canyon. We're talking to the fire district about some reuse / disposal for fire suppression and firefighting practice. And then we're also, trying to work the budget on the reuse booster station that would get us an additional 30 million gallons a year out of the pipeline. So there is some, lower hanging fruit. It's not one big project necessarily.
Yeah, I got infrastructure being put in for reuse irrigation and then also consideration for firelight. So we got reuse and disposal stacking up.
We're back to the same premise since this, we need to understand costs per million gallons of disposal. That it's just that simple. And nothing against the booster, nothing against YC, any of these things. We need to understand what it's cost. I have no idea what it costs to get that up to the YC pond. And if there are other options that are right here or anywhere, we need to understand that before we go down that capital improvement.
Well, I think it'll all be part of it, rate structure, permitting, the reuse master plan that we're working on and we'll have to submit and get approved and stuff, so.
Permitting difficulty will be a big criteria of the decision-making matrix, but yes, dollars per gallon if you're successful.
Right.
A data point as well.
I can put like benchmarks. April is almost paperwork month, contract procurement, joint committee, ILA. And then May conceptually is kind of the dollars and cents month. We'll see if we can hold that pace, but it plays into what is the best bang for the buck for Big Sky Water and Sewer District disposal. And then what is that Canyon District purchase type of agreement structure? And then always talking with Ryan on refining that financial model. And then a third dynamic to that is always the TED-TIF funding, which we're going to continue to advance. And I'm presenting to the Canyon District tomorrow on what those numbers look like, and then presenting to the Gallatin County Commissioners likely at the Joint Commission meeting in May. So nothing will be official at that. It's like, here's what we need to get this project affordable. So
you get that word feasibility in there at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep the pressure on the EQ to make sure that deviation request is approved, because that basically means one trench, one alignment through the pinch point versus two, which is a big deal in terms of feasibility, constructability, traffic management.
Where are we at with that reuse master plan?
We're picking it back up again, but we just had a conversation with the fire district, which we got another, you gotta get that meeting request.
Ryan did with Dustin, at least trying to figure out when we can throw a calendar or throw a meeting on your
The date. What am I gonna have this last week?
the 29th.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, the point being that it's a continuous effort. The reuse management plan is in draft form and has been for a while, but it's like it's in draft form for a month and it needs an update. Another month, it needs another update, but
We're adding a couple more
targets
components
everywhere.
Well, I understand there's moving targets all over the place, but they're all going to play into whatever decisions we're making with the canyon, with snowmaking, and when do we have a problem? It's kind of what I'm more interested in knowing.
Yeah, we're adding a couple more components to that. So my plan is hopefully in the next few months, we'll have something put together that we can bring, because we're gonna want to take that to DEQ to get it reviewed and get it approved.
Yeah.
We were really close to doing that this last year. And then Ron kind of separated out and we kind of kept the current reuse and our current nutrient plan and didn't do that. And then we come back and we've got through our pilot stuff we're doing, and then the expansion of the consideration for fire suppression and building that infrastructure. So we're adding those two chapters to it. And once we get that done,
Could I just think about our capital improvement plan, and there is no reuse component to that currently. But with the irrigation practices at the, 3 golf courses that are on, and then the snowmaking we have, I just want to know when there's a problem.
Yeah.
When do we expect to be a problem? Because that should weigh into the capital plan at some point in time, recognizing that it's all going to change. I get it, but yeah.
Yeah, and the reason it's not in your CIP is that the lowest hanging fruit shouldn't come out of your reserves. Basically.
Fair enough, yeah.
Disposal on this golf course has got to be expanded given the treatment levels we're at right now.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of years ago, they were pretty tough treatment levels when we're going to those irrigation meetings. Now at these levels, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, we should have the opportunity to have higher irrigation levels with given the treatment over at the golf course, Big Sky Golf Course.
I would phrase it as nitrogen will not be your
limitation.
Yeah, limiting factor.
Pumps will be able to pump enough water to make days.
It's been removed, so now it's
That's huge.
just hydrologic.
Except they gotta start using fertilizer over there.
Yeah, sounds like.
You know, that's next step.
2.5, just.
You're gonna say that. There was.
Right.
It's a low number.
In that monthly irrigators meeting, we'll just encourage them to ease into that to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah.
The last thing we want is them to load that right back up to the, whatever, over 100 ounce per acre. Right?
It's another tool. It's just another tool. And that's what you're getting at is when do we have, constraints put on us? And
Well, from what we've done, and we've talked about it before over the last year or so, we're sitting about 80%. This last year, Adam's done a really good job. We've got the pump, so he's actually increased the pumping capacity of YC1. So this year we'll get a little bit more data as we're picking this back up. But because of our A1 status, we have a lot more options in front of us. It's just unfortunate we've got to get DEQ approval. So we got to get this document put back together to get it in front of them. Yeah, to get it done, and then that'll give us our tool map to get everything fundamentally laid out to where we can start seeing stuff in the CIP and building infrastructure. So I know like Town Center has preemptively put in reuse irrigation lines. We've got the slip to get under the highway. Now it's just getting that approval so we can start tying that stuff in and increasing our disposal capacity so that we can have that. So I'm hoping that'll be done this year.
The comment that nitrogen is not the limiting factor reminded me, one of Guy's recommendations was understand the bioavailability of the nitrogen in the work effluent. Is that something we can put in motion? I honestly don't even know what that sampling looks like and what that pilot looks like.
The labs don't know what that sampling looks like because
The lab we certified laboratory we use doesn't have that technology to assimilate what the organic nitrogen component is. We are speciating out the full nitrogen cycle to get a better baseline, have that data set available. But the district, when I did a little bit of research, it would be significant monies to find a laboratory to go down that road. Now, in my opinion, I don't think we necessarily need to do that at this point, but.
It's mass spec, and I've been doing nutrient for over 20 years. And there's just a portion of it that it's limited technology. You're not going to do anything with it. It doesn't matter how many stages you have. It's just, that number was 3, what we consider non-detect if it's under even TKN. You just get to a number that technology just can't do anything with. And no matter what treatment you put at it, it's not going to touch it.
The more we can legitimize that, the more defensible whether it's a groundwater discharge from an application or surface water, I'm gonna work on memorializing it to the limit of my mental capacity.
we did do the write-up. We offered up in the joint. It's about 2 pages and it's on what we believe this likely is. We don't want to ship it to a lab in LA or whatever, but peptides and proteins and
The bioavailability is somewhat questionable, but it'd be a study, you know, it's like a PhD study at this point, but we can use the little 2-page get down to 2 milligrams per liter. What is it? It's not ammonia, it's not nitrate. That's right. Protein stuff.
Yeah, I might just try to roll that into some of our DEQ coordination. This is our effluent quality. The groundwater discharge permit should be a slam dunk, but for some reason up here it's not. So a challenge.
Had enough.
Yep. Every month we hear the word Maui. Maui has become.
I think I'm done. I think you guys
Well,
It's a good place to go hang out.
to piggyback on that,
Testing.
Maui is putting in, they're calling it a green belt, but basically using effluent reuse water to spray around residential structures to prevent what happened in 2022. So similar thing is what Dustin is thinking, and we'll figure out if we can do that here.
Great. That it?
Yes.
Okay. Al, it's just in time. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we have one more.
We have one more big one, but if you wanted to knock out Northwest Land Agreement real quick and Firelight, because those are really quick, I think this one might be a little.
I don't think, do we have anyone else? We do it, you're Firelight, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be less technical.
You okay with that?
Absolutely,
Get a
yes.
cup of coffee, relax. All right. Then we'll do that. Al, Northwest Energy.
I want to steal your thunder.
No, I just responded so you didn't come back to a task.
Well, this week while I was gone, Brian signed the deed we're transferring our portion of the property over. So all documents are signed. I've not heard that it specifically has been recorded and closed, but we're at the 99th percentile, I think. Amy, I'm guessing you haven't received any invoice on cost. That's probably something I'll have to provide as well. Sharing the title report cost, but yeah, we're almost there.
Along with John Olson, we should all celebrate together when we do the Spanish Peaks, that we'll get into cold smoke. We'll do them all at once for over at Tips Up. Bar tap on you. All right, John, be good. Boy, it sure makes you appreciate it when we talk about all the water resources and how ideal that location is. That location is just so great to look up. So thanks for your persistence on that, Al.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to the Firelight MOU then.
Okay, all right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. So yeah, this will be pretty quick, I think, just an update. So we've been working through the MOU over the last year with Johnny. A lot of back and forth, a lot of data. I think, when was it, Johnny? The end of the year, I put together that summary report, that 200 and some pager. And since then, we have sort of focused on paths forward. We had a meeting a few weeks ago at this point with the committee from Firelight, who is spearheading the effort to start their water and sewer district. And the result of that meeting, the take home, at least my interpretation is that the preferred pathway to getting this done would be for annexation being the goal. The preferred pathway towards that would be for the Big Sky District to annex the Firelight District directly. That's a more known, less friction sort of path to get that done. So of course, that depends on Firelight getting the votes that they need next month to form their district. And so at this point, we're in a holding pattern, just waiting to see what happens there next month. And if they're successful, then I think the preferred path would be for HLH, us, and Firelight Water and Sewer District to sort of work out a deal to transfer assets and then do an annexation from that entity into Big Sky. Is that?
Yeah, overall, if everybody recalls last year, they missed it by one vote. So we knew they were going to take a second stab at it, which they have. They've done the work. Karen Mackey sold their property, though therefore she couldn't represent the board, so now I'm talking to Becky and they actually have 5 appointed committee members, so. When Kevin and I talked, I said, man, we're really close, they formed that water and sewer district, where, you know, we become consultants at that point in time. So all the work that we did, it's not in vain, because it's the same work that they would have to do, so they don't have to do that work, we kept them along, so. Right now, we're waiting to see the results in May, and if that passes, then what we've done over the last year, they'll finish off with them. And then we'll talk with Firelight Water and Sewer District when they get formed. So once that's done, I expect things to, you know, happen pretty quick. Once they get all their transactions and stuff done, we already gave them cost estimates. We did that several months ago, so we already have all that stuff.
What were those cost estimates?
6 million?
6 something.
Yeah, okay, 6 something.
That's a cost estimate for
them connecting to us, paying all their fees, and then also a portion of the Mid Mountain Booster Station for us to get water back over to that area for reuse and then eventual groundwater discharge. So yeah, it counts for all their costs.
Yeah, some of that is like, we know, costs we know, like the connection fees, but some of it is taking over their.
So I'm thinking infrastructure, you know, we know with the, you know, we can identify a fee that won't fluctuate to get into the district, but what about the infrastructure? What percentage of that 6 million do you see the infrastructure?
Roughly, I think the connection fees were 2 something of that, and so the infrastructure's 4 or 5, but it's an engineer's estimate. To your point earlier, you'll know when you have bids, but we have to go in also and look at the sewer and condition of the manholes and the condition of the drain fields. And
so you thought 2 million of that would be impact fees or pick fees?
I believe so.
Just, I love pinning you on this thing. How many units are in there, Jim?
217 connections.
217, so at 2 million, it would be under 10,000 per unit pick, right? That makes sense? 217, 2 million. Somewhat under. Just want to get an idea where this is fitting into everything we're doing right now. Then we're going to deal with how does it factor into the plan expansion? Yep, that's the tricky one. Got it. Is this bringing some clarity? I mean, because it's coming next month, but our next meeting, we know. Hopefully, you don't miss it by 1 vote again, that's for sure.
Yep.
Karen worked awfully hard at that.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. Yeah,
that was tough.
Yeah.
Headline news in the paper.
Yeah.
Open up the paper and it's like 1 vote. Okay.
So the 6 million would be paid to the district? And then we would take on that infrastructure work? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. There's work to be done to connect them to water and to sewer and for what we want to do with reuse. So that's all of that. And you know, it's a preliminary engineer's estimate. So please don't pin me down on these numbers.
So then I'm glad to hear you see, you're saying what I want to hear you say is that that's a ballpark.
it's a ball.
And both sides know that's a ballpark right now.
That's-
It's not,
We both sides,
Yeah.
and you do worry, and it's from a real estate background. You start thinking about disclosure, people know what they're voting for, number 1, number 2, if someone's looking at buying one of these units, they know what they're in for. I'm just thinking about that, and we're on record now talking about some of these details that are preliminary.
Yeah, they're preliminary. We had to put the estimated cost together to go
Of
to
course,
DEQ and to PSC.
chicken and the egg, you had to do that to get to here, but people need to understand the, let's just say the uncertainty of the budget here.
Yep.
I'm happy to give a presentation next month where we show the spreadsheets and actually walk through it. Today,
that's fair.
It's more than fair. We would, so it's just good to know that's a big part of the community, just like the Union is, so.
So I know that's been, you know, a long thing, but we have been working through that MOU, just working with Firelight. We've got them abreast and met with them and stuff, so they knew what they were looking at. And you know, my stance is if they form that, then we'll let that transpire and then we can deal with handle business with the water and sewer district, which will be a lot easier, but yeah, they have. So.
It's gotta be great to have a bullet point somewhere. It doesn't need to be 20 pages, just a couple of pages to say, this is what you get, this is what you give. You just can't take a risk on the ratepayers in the infrastructure.
Oh, wait till after election day to do that.
I said next meeting, I said next meeting.
Well, I don't want to start it before.
Yeah,
Hopefully
good
it
point,
passes.
good point. Yeah, don't wanna,
I mean, unless Scott's doing it for free, then go for it.
well said, Al.
Well, the work is done. It would just be
Just somewhere in.
me bringing up the file and prepping a little bit versus off the cuff, throwing numbers in.
Thank you.
All these terms, off the cuff, please note to self, this is off the cuff. Okay, great. Thanks for coming by.
Bet.
Unless there's any other questions.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. No, you put a lot of hard work into it.
Yeah, well, you know, little by little, we're making progress.
It's been going on since I started on this board. So, literally, 2013, I think it was on an agenda. Okay. Thank you for shuffling things around.
Tony, can we drive?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. So I know I've been an infrequent visitor here to remind you, I'm Julie Barrett with WGM Group and have been working on the water rates. And I've got Mike Cusick here with me because he's a water rate attorney specialist. And if I get myself into trouble, then he can hopefully bail me out. Water rates always exist at that intersection between like science and the law. So we have both of those things to deal with. So I can get down to my. Actually, I've got some PowerPoint slides here, so you guys don't have to look at my whole thing of my report. So the main thing that we have on the table for water rates is doing what we call a change application. And we met with DNRC last November for a preliminary meeting with them to talk about what we wanted to do. And we've got a couple of main goals that we would like to achieve with the water rate application. And one is to create a consistent and complete place of use. So that right now, the different water rights kind of have different histories, they cover different parts of the district.
No, you're unmuted.
So certain wells can be used in certain places and not in others. So the consistent place of use, and then this would also include putting the planned annexations into the place of use. And I'll show you a map that represents that in a minute. We've got some wells that have been around for a long time and some of them have problems that we would like to be able to add and replace some of those existing wells to be able to meet the capacity.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for his.
And then, oh, we have that. And then the last goal is to change all of the purpose of all of the water rates to clearly say municipal, because right now, again, because of the various history that these water rights have, some of them say commercial, some of them say something else. So we want them all to say municipal, which gives the district the most amount of flexibility in how they use their water under the DNRC's regulations. So let's take a look. This is my map that I put together that kind of shows the different aspects of the place of use. The green part is mainly what the place of use of the existing water rights, and you'll see it's a little bit of a hodgepodge there. And then the yellow is the Yellowstone Club. And that is because while that is not technically in the district's service area, when the water rate was filed to provide water to Yellowstone Club, that was included. So there's a water right out there that allocates a specific flow rate and volume that the district provides to the Yellowstone Club. Not all of which has been used yet to date, but that's what the agreement is. So at this point, my proposal is to change the place of use of all of the water rights to cover that purple boundary. So we got Firelight in there as a proposed annexation and Cold Smoke, and then the BSR annexation. And then what I did was also just like fill in all the places in between. And that does not in any way commit the district to serving those places that are shown in the white, but it prevents you from having to come back and do another water right change in the future if any of those places do become prime for annexation. So kind of gives you all a little bit of flexibility. And we get a hand raised. Do we have a question?
Mr. Schropp, can you unmute? If you got a question, we can hear you.
Oh, his head there.
There you go. Now you're unmuted.
Brian Wheeler, are you on, have you unmuted me?
You're unmuted. We're hearing every word you say.
Okay, my question is, are we gonna vote on the water rights application and the rates for the next 2 years, or are we going to defer those until another meeting?
Defer those to another meeting. I don't believe we're voting on anything right now.
We're done with.
So we're done with voting, Schropp, and we do need to confirm the rates and those other items you identified in May, so we can adopt it in June after the public hearing. That makes sense?
Yep.
So Schropp, we got a 2-meeting process now. Anything else?
Would you repeat that again?
Okay, we will not be voting on anything else today. We will be going through the public hearing in May, and then hopefully we can adopt it in the June meeting.
Well, if we're not gonna vote, how much longer is the meeting gonna be active?
I'm guessing at least a half an hour.
Yeah, at least half an hour.
Yeah.
If you need to go, Mr. Schropp, you certainly can do so.
Well, I've got a snoot full of cold, and so I'm not particularly on all 90 or on all 4s. So if we don't have anything that is needed to be voted on, can I be excused from the meeting?
You sure can, Schropp. And we'll look forward to either seeing you in person in May or having you online in May.
Well, we've had a little trouble in getting up, but I've been able to pretty well follow the meeting and what the discussion has been. And I'll stick on for at least another 30 minutes.
All right. Well, you get well. You get some rest there, Schropp, if you need to go.
Okay.
Same thing, Dick. We don't need. We have quorum if we needed something, but I don't think we're going to need to vote on anything. I see Sherry's iPad there.
Yeah, I'll hang on for a while here. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
sorry I got on late.
Oh, you're good.
We had quorum. All is good. I would say this: today's board packet was a good one to review. A lot of great data in there. You just need to sort through it a little bit. It was very helpful for streamlining a lot of detail. So
Thanks.
Does the place of use have an impact like on the disposal side of it too? It's like if we have, looking at the golf course at Yellowstone Club and
Credits.
the the snowmaking potential as well, does that, if you pull water, treat the water and then dispose of it, does that place of use matter?
Well, to some degree, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong on this, with the wastewater treatment, the rulings that the DNRC and the courts have made about that reuse of water is that for as long as the entity has control over that wastewater, then you can do with it what you want, and you don't need any additional water rights to do that.
Okay.
So that's, and the municipal use, in my view, gives you guys that flexibility to use it for snowmaking or whatever needs to be done with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good question. Same one. Yeah.
So, and this broader boundary gives you guys flexibility too. And one thing I should say is that water rates are always like on this long time horizon. So after we get this change approved, you guys will have 20 years right off the bat to complete everything that we've said that we would do in this change. And when you get to the end of that 20 years, quite honestly, you can ask for another 20 years. And so always have that ability to take into account the growth that is going to come down the line.
To give you a little bit more on the reuse side, that's why we have to have our reuse management plan. Is that's where that map would be identified where we plan to use all the water. So that map will be.
Scott, you have a question?
Is that regardless of whether it's consumptive or non-consumptive use?
Yeah, once you put the purpose of the water right, that when you're, first withdrawing the water under the municipal use, then the DNRC doesn't have that like regulatory authority to say, no, you can only use, this volume for consumptive and this volume for non-consumptive. What it does, what the reuse does is it reduces your consumptive use basically, because instead of, irrigating without fresh water, you're reusing it. So you are overall reducing your consumed use, which is good for the future.
Right.
Any other questions for now? All right, so basically your water rates are in two sets. You've got the Meadow Village and the Mountain Village, well, 3 sets. And then all the little yellow ones I'm just lumping those into an other category for the purposes of this analysis. And so that's the Meadow Village and the Mountain Village have really different histories, and that bears out in the water rights and the analysis. So if you do want some light reading on water rights, you can read through my report. I've been trying to just hit the highlights in this presentation. When we talk about doing the change application, obviously you guys are looking at how can you meet the growing demands, and getting new water rights up here is very challenging, and that's why we're looking at this change application. And what that basically means is you have water rights that are unperfected, which means you were issued a permit and the flow rate and volume on that permit you've never had the capacity or the need to divert that full flow rate and volume. And so you have the right to add wells in order to be able to complete that permit because you need more capacity. You also have a few historical water rights, which are basically the water use as of 1973. And with those, the cap on that flow rate volume is what the water board has said it is. And if the wells that those water rights are associated with are not currently producing the amount that it says on that water right, you have the ability to either move that water right into a different well, or move that unused or underutilized capacity to a different well. So there's kind of two separate categories of water rights, two main sets of wells, each with their own water right history. And so one of our goals with the change application would be to say that the district can pump any portion of its volume and flow rate from any of its wells, wherever the need lies, as long as it's used within this place of use. The DNRC may give us some pushback on that. And we'll just have to see as we go through the change process with them, what questions they have. And that is where, you know, Mike comes in, and the DNRC can raise questions about historical use on those pre-73 water rights. With the unperfected permits, it's not really a question. We've already been given a permit for that, and it's kind of whatever you need to do in order to complete that permit. The historical water rights, typically, the DNRC asks for evidence that that full water right had been used at some point in the past. Municipalities have some different statutes that apply to them as far as that goes, and that's where Mike comes in. And if the DNRC gives us some pushback on that historical use, then we've got an argument for them. And I don't like, do you want to speak to that for a moment?
Sure, I can do that. So I think Julie just explained to you on the permitting side, so we have two types of water rights. We have permits, and then we have what we call existing rights, which are the old rights that are kind of grandfathered in under the old law. They have priority dates before July 1 of 1973. For the permits, Julie was explaining that you have these permitted amounts with the total volume that you have 20 years to perfect. And if you haven't fully perfected and used all that volume, get an extension, you can come back and have more time to perfect that. With existing water rights, it sort of works the reverse for municipalities. They have this thing called in common law out of Colorado called the Great and Growing Cities Doctrine, or the Growing Communities Doctrine, which allows municipalities and entities like municipalities to appropriate water for reasonable, foreseeable future needs. So they can appropriate initially a large quantity of water, and that water right is perfected when they have the infrastructure to deliver it, or not all the infrastructure, but they actually have the wells in to deliver that water, and it's not subject to a claim that it hasn't been used and therefore is abandoned. You may have heard that in other contexts, the use it or lose it abandonment. So in Montana, we actually codified that, and that's the statute that's up there.
And I expect you to read all of this, right?
But it's with respect to municipalities, at the end, it says that municipalities are not subject to abandonment if they've met one of the following 4 criteria. And, you know, some of those criteria are acquired, constructed, or regularly maintained diversion or conveyance structures for the future municipal use of the water. I think the district probably qualifies that for that. Conducted a formal study prepared by a registered professional engineer or qualified consulting firm. That is like Mark Canan, Western Groundwater Services Source Capacity Update. So I guess what Julie is saying is DNRC has this mindset that they need to look at historical use because they do a lot of changes in other contexts, like irrigation and things like that, where that is more of a factor. But we have this statute that's right on point for municipalities. So it really sort of limits the amount of historic use analysis that's really relevant in this context. That makes sense. But it is kind of, it is a little bit of the flip side of the permitting thing where you keep getting time to perfect until you're perfected, whereas the historic rights, they're perfected when they're appropriated for foreseeable needs.
so that hopefully will get us through the DNRC process without too much of a struggle. So one of the things that Johnny asked me to do was, with all these existing water rights, is to talk about, how much of the water rights have already been used and what is left to develop. And so I've looked at these, like the Mountain Village for flow rate, the Mountain Village for volume, the Meadow Village for flow rate, and the Village for volume, because the flow rate and the volume aren't necessarily directly connected. I mean, obviously the flow rate is what is needed to meet those peak demands, with, of course, your storage being offsetting that a little bit. And then, of course, volume is the total amount that you need over the year to meet all of those needs. So we look at the flow rate and volume kind of individually. So with the Mountain Village rates, your total flow rate that you have under the water rights is 1699 gallons per minute. And the installed flow rate, and I have based this from Mark Canane's, the Western Groundwater Services 2022 source water update. At that time, the installed flow rate was listed as 1395. So we've got a couple of wells in the Mountain Village set, Mountain Village 3 in particular, that is not a really good producer and it's had some problems. And so I've set the available flow as kind of a range, depending upon what you end up doing with Mountain 3. You could, Johnny and I have talked, and one of those options is to just move that water right completely from Mountain 3 to a new well. So that's why I've got a range of available flow rate under the Mountain Village rates. A couple other things with the Mountain Village wells, Cascade wells 5 and 6 are in this group. And of course, you have the agreement with Boyne for giving them some water for snowmaking. One option that you could consider is to revisit that agreement with Boyne and carve out their portion of the water use from that water rate and transfer that to them. And then the district keeps the remainder of that water rate. And then you guys can just like work independent of each other. You don't have to have this agreement that ties you together and obligates the district to do certain things at certain times. They could just operate it as they need it. So that's one of the considerations. And of course, this is also the Yellowstone Club. One of the water rights in this set is the one that allocates 150 gallons a minute up to the Yellowstone Club. And so I didn't include those in this water right flow total amount. I was looking just at what the district currently has available under the water rights and the current agreements.
Is that Yellowstone Club flow or deduct the available flow now? Or go come away from the available flow?
Yes, so that 1699 number is what you guys have available with the Yellowstone Club already taken out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then with the Meadow Village, the flow rate on the Meadow Village is much more completed. On the WGS report, it said the installed flow rate was 975 gallons a minute and your total water rate flow rate is 985, so you're basically there. There is a little bit of confusion in the water rate record, and if you look back at Mark's report from 2022, he comes up with a higher flow rate that's available from these wells. But I think that's because one of the permits like double counts some of that flow rate. And after my like really digging into the files, that this 985 I think is your actual cap on the flow rate from the group of Meadow Village wells. And I think that's the conclusion that the DNRC is going to come to as well when they look at these. The nice thing about the Meadow Village wells is over the course of the last couple of decades, there was historical water rights filed, there have been other change applications filed and permits. And basically with that group of things, it allows any flow rate and volume to be pumped from any of the Meadow Village wells. So there's not a restriction of, like there's, for example, in the Mountain Village wells, you have a certain restriction on how much Mountain VII can pump. With the Meadow Village wells, you've just got the ability to basically pump as much as you need from any of them. And then this is my group of other flow rates. So if you look back at that map that we had up, we have the Lone Moose, the Aspen Groves, and the Hidden Valley wells that are not currently in use. They've been used in the past. And what we would like to do is take the water that's associated with those water rights and move those most likely downhill to the Meadow Village and be able to make use of that flow rate from the Meadow Village wells or potentially the Uplands well if that becomes part of the system. Questions on that? So between the water rights from these three areas, we get another 356 gallons a minute that would be available. And then I just put the same information into a visual. So you can see on the flow rate, the Meadow Village is pretty much almost completely at capacity. And we've got a little bit more flow available in Mountain Village and from those other water rates. So then if we talk about volume, it's a little harder to say like how much of your volume is used compared to what you're currently using because like your actual annual usage varies so much over time. But what I did was I took the projections that the WGS report had. He had projected out over the next couple of decades of what your water use was going to look like. So in combination, and again, this is taking the Yellowstone Club out, you've got just over 692 acre feet per year of water right volume. The WGS report for 2025 projected that as 325 acre feet was needed in 2025 and leaving you with just over 367. And for people who talk million gallons per day instead of acre feet per year, I put those numbers up there too. And then also with the projected volume that Mark had in that report was 2291 SME. And so that gives you an idea of how many additional SFE you could serve.
In the water.
Yeah. Just on the water side, not on the wastewater side. Any questions about that? Oh, I guess look at the Meadow Village. The Meadow Village water rights also have a very large volume associated with them. I'm not sure that you guys can ever use that total volume. It was based on when the permits were filed here, it was based on an SFE number that is over twice what you guys are estimating currently your SFE numbers are. So you've got this huge volume to work with on the Meadow Village wells. Unfortunately, you have a very small amount of flow rate or basically no additional flow rate with the Meadow Village system, but plenty of additional volume.
So for clarification, we're maxing out our current pumping capacity. So what that means is that 3 of the wells in Meadow Village, we will have to rehab and make bigger. We have the water, we just can't pump it because we're maxing out our current design goals. So that would go into the CIP to redo wells 1, 2, and 3 in Meadow Village to increase the pumping capacity.
And then with the other water rights, you still have, with adding these 3 together, that's another 325 acre feet per year. So really what I see is a volume is not at all an issue. You guys got plenty of volume to grow into. Any questions on that?
So we have enough volume to cover what our current obligations are, plus potentially annexation on paper.
And even beyond that, looking at the like 2042 projection that was in the WGS report, you've got more volume even past that 2042 date based on those projections. Unless, something changes drastically that would affect those projections. But
So we have the right, but not the source.
exactly.
So I keep using source.
You have the legal part of it.
Got it,
Just
got
don't
it.
have the physical part of it yet.
So when people talk about it in the community, they're always concerned, do you have enough water? No one ever says, do you have enough water on paper? They say, do you have enough water? So this is really encouraging from a paper perspective.
Yes.
Now,
That was the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, legally, having the right to pump this volume of water is, just takes I think a lot of burden off of you guys.
Great. Great news.
Hey, Brian, can I weigh in a second?
You sure can. Go ahead.
Are we looking at quality here? Because I know it's not a lot, but being in Aspen Groves, that quality wasn't good. That's why it's not being used. There was a lot of bentonite in there.
Yeah,
And
Mr. Fast, that's where, so this list of wells, we actually have a list of wells we are going to be closing out because of water quality. And this is a group of them. So this year, we're actually doing Hidden Village 2. Hidden Village 1 is disconnected, and then we have consideration for test well 9 is going to be closed out because we have to close it out. It cuts through 2 different aquifers.
so you close those out and then you can pump more somewhere else, right?
Yeah, so we can transfer these water rights to another area.
Yeah, by rehabbing existing wells.
Yeah.
Or
Got it.
So there's actually, maybe it's a finer point we don't need to talk about. There's 2 ways of doing that. There's replacement wells, which is a very simple process, a 1-for-1 replacement. But what Julie's got proposed here is doing a change that gives you the ability to take that water from that shut down well at any other location.
Got it.
Yeah.
So Dick, just to recap, you're able to watch this PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is impressive. I mean, it's really overwhelming how much paper we have. Not source, but paper. I mean, I'm surprised at this. I never saw it all in one place like this gathered. So Dick, what you're talking about will be the next question, and that's how do we expand or improve the source? Expand, of course, rehabbing wells, and improving would be, of course, having to maybe either replace or so on, but that's impressive.
And also being able to add the Middle Fork wells to the system under your existing water rights. And that's been one of the big pieces of that we've talked about.
The big question is, where's the honey hole for getting the source? Where's the best source that we can find? I know that.
At the top of the system with the best water, yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's the hard part. You started out thinking the hard part was getting the rights, but now it's, where's that source?
Yeah, and the Middle Fork wells, from the reporting that I've read, it looks like they've got, good flow rate capacity, but then brings
Quality.
some water quality
Yeah.
concerns, so, yeah.
How about the mountain? Everything's so congregated in the mountain, those lake wells, not wells 5 and 6, the White Otter wells, but everything's so tight down there, and the test wells and everything that was going. Where else do you branch out of there?
That is out of my league.
Got it.
That's a good question for, I don't know if you can get Kinane, is he retired?
He is retired. So actually, E2S is, they're working on the water model. And
I mean, there were
Yeah.
10 test wells up there that didn't produce, so.
And we'll be closing out 10 test wells, and then we got plans to rehab 3 or move 3 so we can get better water quality there.
Trying to rehab 3 is probably.
Yeah, and then we did talk to E2S, that was some of our consideration scenarios for the Middle Fork wells, because we can send that up. So you know what that could look like to help with.
So you can send that out.
The Middle Fork wells.
Not just money.
I was just gonna say, that was actually not the consideration when they talked about those wells, that they would always go down to the meadow. So for quote source, but you are considering pumping those back up to the mountain system, but the mountain system's already producing for the meadow.
Or Hidden Village and Long Moose right now.
So,
Yeah, it was suffice it to say
Or
that
Aspen Groves, I mean.
the geology is complicated from what I've seen.
so source, okay,
All right, so this slide is just trying to sum it all up. Your total available flow rate and volume, that this is, something of a, I mean, I guess there's an error factor in the volume, but you've got anywhere from 820 to 935 gallons a minute that you could still develop. And the total of over 1,700 acre feet, which is a lot of water. And again, I just put that into a graph. So our other water rights, that's the volume that they could contribute. The orange is the mountain village, what it could contribute, and then the meadow village. And that's the one that has the very large flow rate associated with it that you guys can continue to perfect. And then I just put it on in million gallons per day, because Scott always asks me, what is that, 1 million gallons per day? And that is pretty much all I got, unless you guys have some other questions. Just look through my notes here and see if there's anything I didn't say, and I don't think so. Oh, I guess there was one. I wanted to go back to the map and make one point with the moving the water rights. What I have recently had an issue with the DNRC on moving wells upstream on streams that have in-stream flow water rights, which all of the tributaries, all of the named tributaries up here have in-stream flow rights. So the good thing is that in this case, the strategy would be taking the water rights from those mountain village wells and moving them down to the Middle Fork. And similarly with the Lone Moose, Aspen Groves, Hidden Valley, moving those down to the Meadow Village. And in that way, we don't get crosswise with DNRC about adverse effects to the in-stream flow rates. Because that's really going to be the limiting factor here in your ability to move these water rights around, is the DNRC's determination if that change has an adverse impact on any of the existing water rights. So that's what we want to keep in mind as we go through this process, is making sure that we're not having any additional adverse effect. And I also, I guess, I put the uplands well on here. I know that this is something of a question mark of whether that will be part of the system in the future with the water rights application. I generally tend to recommend to cast a broader net and assume that things are going to get brought in, because it's easier to take them off than it is to come back and add them later. All right. Anything else that you want to add, Mike? We'll be moving forward with the water right application process. We have until mid-May to complete the pre-application. And the next step will be, we'll complete the pre-application and the DNRC will do their technical analysis. And that will give us the DNRC's position.
It didn't hit me too.
And help us, figure out if they see something that is a roadblock that we need to, modify our approach. We'll note that after we get the technical analysis from them.
Okay, wow.
All right.
Impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't know if you have any questions.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Quick question. I may not be using the right term, but does all the calculations for flow include replenishment or refreshment of the aquifers? How does that figure in?
To the extent that that was considered in the original permitting process, then yes, it is. But so, you know, some of these permits date back 20 some years, and that consideration was not always made in the permitting process. They may have done, you know, a 72-hour pump test and said, yeah, we can get 300 gallons a minute from this well. But what wasn't done was a real analysis of whether or not that's sustainable, you know, for 10 years, 20 years. So
Good example of 5 and 6, right? Back when those were conveyed, they were projecting 400 gallons, 300 gallons per minute. I think they were in the 40 to 50. 50 gallons per minute from a represented 400.
Yeah.
So Dick, that's a great question. The accuracy is going to be key as we go ahead and try to expand the source.
Yep.
Yeah, and in that budget line items, you saw some well monitoring things, so we'll be putting actual monitors into these wells so that we can see drawdown while they're running, and then how fast they recover when they're off too.
So we would do that before we expand the well, just to make sure.
Not necessarily. Yes, I think just for timeline and ease, but then that will just help us know if we are overdrawing a certain aquifer or not, and then we can reestablish ideas of where water should come from, or if we can, you know, upsize a well without detriment to the aquifer.
So, yeah, so Dick's point is that that would be the risk if we expanded a well and then found out.
Yeah.
Now we can pump more water out, but it's not there to pump out.
Yeah, and that's, so I mean, I'm accustomed to doing well monitoring and stuff, because one, it's given it time to recharge, so you know, when you're running wells all the time, there's no recovery. So then, you know, you're able to cycle your wells and you get better data, and then you do get that recovery. So if we do find one that's taking longer to recover, then that's all data that we put in, because the EMRC is leaning towards aquifer management versus, you know, the pumping volume. So we're just collecting more data to be able to utilize our source.
We talked about that Bureau of Mines, called it the Rose Report. His name did a great presentation, and now I question that for recovery. How much time was factored into that? I mean, how extensive was that? But there was, Dick, you remember the 3D modeling of Aspen Grove, Spanish Peaks North? They called them the Crowther wells. Can you mute, Dick?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, yes.
You really focused on that. It was in your neighborhood. You knew, Dick, you knew Jack and company. That was really helpful to understand exactly what we're talking about here. I mean, how deep do we go on something if it doesn't recover, or how extensive was that study?
Right, and just well interactions with each other.
What's that?
And just interactions with other wells.
Exactly. I don't know how global that was, the impact that had, but that was a great program for us to learn about what you're now taking to the next step.
yeah, and one last comment, I guess, is the municipalities are kind of granted one other special exception in the law, and that is you can add storage at any time, and you do not have to do anything with your water rights when you add storage components to the system. And that's also expressly in the statutes. And knowing that storage is not necessarily cheap or easy, but to the extent that it makes it possible to deal with the recovery issues.
Sure.
Then you've got that option.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That was great. Really. All right. I don't want to lose you, Dick, so we're gonna keep moving along here. Legal, so much. We're on the legal. I know, we're going.
This is all the stuff we're working on with legal. Like I said, I meet with Susan Friday. A lot of like Boyne and the fire department, it's gonna move pretty quick. We'll get the bones down to flat. And then just following up on some of the other smaller stuff, so all good with that.
What's the schedule for the fire department? Do they have a fast track? I know
they're
time sensitive with coal smoke, but
2 to 3 years out. It's actually lining out pretty good.
Any questions on legal?
No.
back to it, just to punctuate, we gotta start tracking these legal expenses individually. I mean, it's just good information. I mean now down to, nothing against Boyne or anything, but what are we covering for Boyne right now? What are we covering for this new lawsuit? I started looking at it and I'm going, wait a minute, you got Ron Edwards identified, you got John Rockaway identified. How does this all play into it? It's gonna grow exponentially.
I already have it in a spreadsheet showing each of those different lawsuits and each of them, and it feeds into what the total is. So
this is a fresh one though, this last month.
Yeah, I haven't had that one because it's so new. It's happening.
Yeah, that's Mike Duke mentioned. I mean, it's just, this is a broad net that we gotta make sure that.
I'll have that for you.
We need to understand the categories, as board members for Ron's role in the past, how that works, and that's tough. Okay, legal, we got it. New business, right? On to that.
So I already went through my permits in the summary, but 8 were submitted. You guys passed the largest one, the boutique here. There was 2 remodels, some newer homes here in the meadow, 1 large home in Spanish Peaks that's showing up there. That's just sewer capacity for us. And 1 commercial remodel that was no SFE change.
Got it. Okay,
As I compared it, we've been light on permits for the last year.
Yeah.
But this is like the first of all,
It really is.
to compare like the last 12 months versus the previous 12 months.
We're off to a slower start. I'll say that. I was here for the beginning of that, but not processing all the permits at that point, but it's definitely slower, but we're just picking up. So I'll track it. I have the spreadsheet too to compare the year to year. So I'll let you know.
It'd be good to look, as we start to, factor in all of these different things we've been talking about.
A 2-year trend, maybe a 2 or 3 years, so you see that the curve.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I have it. I'll just put that graph in.
That'd be great.
Also something to think about, it's how long they're taking to build.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point.
It's
It's
like
not-
3 years.
It's not 1 year, it's 2 to 3 years. So we're putting meters in right now on properties from 3 years, 2-3 years ago. Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So right now, our permitting process, we allow for a year and then they're supposed to reapply. But I'm extending those because no one's building in a year.
It's 18 to 36 months. but
It is.
It also helps us manage the available capacity in that plant, just knowing what the trends are, so we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we commandeer, or we will start commandeering when we issue a whole server capacity letter, so that will signify, because you may not see something for 5 years.
The hotels, what could be 3 years before that's even online, probably. I guess, I'm just guessing. So we have a unique management tool now from all the work that was, done by you, Scott. So I just want to figure out how we can utilize that information.
Every month I update the graph so I can see what the growth curve is. So I'll just add that so you can see it.
Al, what were you gonna say? What's that? This is interesting. Johnny, you did a snapshot a while back and you said gallons per day per SFE and what projects were out there that basically have been permitted but not in the system yet flowing. Something as simple as this 73 SFEs with other things going on with what you just had come through. If those aren't out there for 2 or 3 years, it will tilt the gallons per day per SFE as we look at what's going on.
Yeah, that 9,000 square foot house in Spanish Peaks will take at least 3 years to build. That's just all of theirs take 3 years. So.
But if you take 100 SFEs, let's say you have with the 73, let's just say you hit 100 here in the next couple months, and you're factoring those in as permitted, and you put them in a gallons per day per SFE.
We permitted last, 6 months ago. I don't know, they haven't started. So.
Yeah, something that we're gonna track.
And at what stage, I should know this, because I've done it, but remind me what stage they're required to make the payment?
They have 90 days.
90 days from whenever we approve it?
That's correct.
Oh, I thought it was when you tied in for the water.
No. It's never been that?
No.
Oh, never mind then.
When they put in the permit, we process the permit.
I don't know about, man.
They get a conditional approval until it's paid. And then they get the approval.
And then there's a stipulation that 2 meter prices go up between when they need it and the permit, they have to pay that difference.
Which is necessary because we're seeing increases in prices. It's been pretty steady, but we need that.
There was a different time at one point. The only reason I remember it with the Montauk. is there was a big issue and they had to tie in when that retained that, what do you call it, wall, the geotech wall. And all that, remember they had to tie in and there was like, you know, we don't have to write this check right now, but they had to tie in. There was some type of financial consideration in the old days.
They didn't put a permit in until it was far along the road. They didn't put a permit in when they started there.
Because we're looking at pig sick charges, I'm gonna encourage the public to not do that. If you're planning it, you should, the rates are what they are right now, but we're looking at that.
Good point.
Scott, you were gonna say something?
We had the breakdown in lot, I think line and cities versus permitted, so we can use your software to say. The actual live connections are whatever, 82 gallons per day per SFD versus, I mean, you still got a bunch that are permitted, they're not live yet.
I guess Marlene was kind to me at times on the mountain.
Yeah. So there's, yeah, so in theory, then there's actually a third category. That's
Hell, don't go there. Ixnay.
Even started and then the 3-year cycle, guys.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? Well, okay, good. I'm glad you're on it.
Doors open.
The things that we learn at the tail end.
Well, that's, I mean, it's, your plant took 4 years. Everything is taking much longer.
Yeah.
And it's more expensive. There's a study we released today by Bank of America on water rate and water usage rates going up 8% last year, 7% last year. And why that is, and so all I'm saying here is
Well, this was an impressive exercise. I give Ryan credit from October to now to just understanding who we are with all of our rates and now our CIP. That's great. Just understanding is half of it. That's why I want to keep wanting to get this out to people when they go, why?
the Bank of America story was on the radio. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get some press and.
Yeah. I know from snow removal, a couple different spots, you know, those fuel surcharges that went on 2 years ago. First of all, they never came off, but fuel was below $3 a gallon. You're like, what happened to the fuel surcharge?
Yeah.
So
Increased.
But gas went down, but it increased. Okay. 11 o'clock, boy, we're running late. We're running later, but this is probably where we'll be with these in the future. So we're all done with legal, new business. We got the developments out of the way, annexation, petitions, capacity will serve letters. Everything's tracking for coal smoke. Anything from you gents? You gonna need anything coming up?
No, ball's in our court, and then we'll probably get with Susan in the next week or so.
Okay.
The next step.
Good luck in the election.
Thank you.
You get that from John, so we don't have another false start. Okay. Board inquiries and comments. Any comments? We're wrapping. Regular meeting Tuesday, April 15th.
Yeah, that's, I missed that. It's May 20th.
Yeah.
Next meeting is May 20th.
Yeah, got it. We're there. Motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Done.